I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Tuesday, guys. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on Rockfin, YouTube, Rumble, and Twitter. Gonna have a pretty big show tonight. Dr. West will be here around 8 p.m. Eastern time. I have a lot of questions to ask him, and some of you have already sent questions my way as well. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, I am going to jump into, there's two stories that I want to cover before Dr. West gets here. And then I have one more story after Dr. West. We will do call in tonight because I'm pretty sure you guys want to talk like after an interview. So that'll be my call-in episode for the week. But I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. Let's go ahead and give a shout out to Sabby patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. You keep the lights on around here. All of the lights around me. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories. Ultimate Sabinators. There's also Sabsters. Don't forget about those Sabbies. And of course, members. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. Sabby patrons in the house. What's up? All right. So I am going to go ahead and do the thumbnail. Sometimes I do it after interviews. I'm going to go ahead and do it now to show you what we're going to discuss tonight. Other than the interview with Dr. West, interesting things happening here in reference to developments in geopolitics. I think this is really important. So tonight we are going to discuss, Dr. West will be here around 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're also going to discuss Harry Sisson attacks Brianna Joy Gray. If you have not seen that exchange on Twitter, we're going to talk about that, but we're also going to discuss what Harry really is about, and that includes his friend that also does these pro-Biden videos with him. I have a couple of things to show you, including some receipts to show you why Harry is doing what he's doing. We're also going to discuss Joe Biden Hawaii fail. Yes, Joe Biden finally did make it to Hawaii, and it was not a good look for him, let alone his campaign. We're also going to discuss the Brics Summit in South Africa. Yes, the Brics Summit has started, and we're going to talk about that and what that means for the future of the U.S. dollar and geopolitics in general. And we're also going to cover Washington State ballot measures. I'm not sure if I'll get into Washington, D.C. tonight. We'll see. But I got both Washingtons. Both Washingtons. So yeah, those are our topics tonight. So thank you for joining. Gonna go ahead and hit up some of these super chats here. Thank you so much for the super sticker, Mikey G. And thank you for the super chat, Roger. Quick, ask him if he's willing to step into the line of fire and take questions directly from the people on a future call-in episode. That's already one of my questions, Roger. But thank you so much for that. And David, I'll mention this to Dr. West. I wasted over 1.5K on Act Blue donations to fraudsters who lied about Medicare for all, living wage, etc., only to learn after money went out, they were really allies of the deep state. Eric, let's leave that one starred because I'm going to bring that back up to attention. Thank you so much, David. So let's go ahead and jump into the first story, which is the Brics Summit in South Africa. Now, if you're not aware, there are multiple countries that decided to form their own alliance called Brics. That would be Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. That's what Brics stands for. Now, since Brics has launched, there have been other countries that have also announced that they are interested in joining Brics. But let's get started with this summit in South Africa. You know, it's been quite a big deal for Xi Jinping to arrive. This sends off, I guess I would say alarm. Like this sends off alarm bells, particularly to Western countries and particularly to the United States government, because it shows that there are other countries that are willing to work with China and willing to partner with China. So I want to get started with this tweet here from Richard. Richard says, Xi Jinping arrives for Brics Summit in South Africa. Welcome to the multipolar world. That's right. And this is Xi getting off the plane here. And here's the leader, the gentleman's hand that he's shaking here. This is the leader of South Africa. So this is huge. This is huge. Once again, we are seeing other countries willing to partner with countries in Africa instead of trying to steal their resources, so to speak. So it's not just China, that also includes Russia as well. I'll let this finish here.
Wonderful. Glad to have you here. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for honoring us.
您来访是我们的荣幸，欢迎您到南边的海峡。
See how they break out in song and dance? Do they seem like they are afraid of Xi Jinping? No, they're welcoming him. Sometimes it's important to see how other countries view some of these leaders that the U.S. government has told us to fear. All right. So let's go ahead and dive into that summit in South Africa. Now, CNN has already addressed this. Now, I want you to see the difference in the way that they discussed this based on how the people just greeted Xi Jinping. It says Chinese President Xi Jinping lands in South Africa ahead of Brics Summit. This is coming from CNN. I want you to see how they react to this.
Xi Jinping in South Africa seeking to bolster Beijing's influence among developing nations. During his 3-day state visit, Xi will attend a summit with the leaders of the BRICS, emerging economies. The bloc's members account for more than 40% of the global population. CNN's Stephen Jiang live in Beijing now with more. Stephen, could Xi's trip impact the already strained U.S.-China tensions?
Okay, let's pause here. I want you to pay attention to his facial expression. Look at the look on his face. The commentator here. He looks concerned. He looks worried. But I just showed you the video of the people in South Africa dancing and ready to greet him. They don't look concerned. They don't look worried. And I think this is why sometimes it's important to listen to alternative forms of media, indie media, someone that's not a part of the State Department talking point, so that you can see different perspectives from different people. Now, 40%, he said, these two together. That's significant. Let's hear what he has to say.
Well, Danny, the fact is this is only Xi Jinping's second international trip after the pandemic, the first actually being back in March when he went to Moscow to see his quote-unquote dear friend Putin. So that kind of dynamic and priority really shows you where his foreign policy lies. But also the fact that this grouping, despite their vastly different political and economic models, these leaders, they are bonded over their shared desire and some would say grievances against a U.S.-led global order. So that's why they'll be talking about potentially expanding this group and relying less on the U.S. dollar, all of which, of course, could benefit China at a time when tension remains very high between Beijing and Washington, with a lot of chatter about decoupling, but also this could also benefit Xi Jinping himself as he cements his leadership role in this grouping. But let's not forget, Xi Jinping arrived in South Africa at a time when the Chinese economy is facing its strongest headwinds in decades. He's facing a myriad of problems at home. That means he's perhaps seeking new markets for Chinese exports in the emerging markets, but also he may face more constraints when it comes to what kind of projects China may be able to invest and finance across the so-called global south, especially in Africa. That's why.
Let me pause here for a second. So I'm going to tell you something that he's not explaining to you. This summit was planned like over a year ago. When I first started discussing Brics on this show, I told you, oh, by the way, there's going to be a summit in 2023, yada, yada, yada. So that was already planned. So I'm telling you this because the way that he's trying to portray the narrative is that the reason why Xi Jinping is there is because his economy is having all these problems. Problems? What problems? Compared to the United States? Compared to a country like Germany that entered a recession? Compared to the Netherlands that I just announced a couple of days ago also entered a recession? What problems? Let's continue. I'm going to go back just a little bit.
The so-called global south, especially in Africa. That's why some experts say we are seeing this shift in strategy. They are adopting a more low-cost, high-impact strategy by bringing more African military officers to China for training, for example, but also expanding its soft power through cultural investments and propaganda. One thing they're doing, Danny, is launching a show called Classics, quoted by Xi Jinping. So I'm sure they hope that's going to be a hit in Africa. Danny?
Wow.
This is just... It's interesting to hear this gentleman on the right talk about propaganda, someone else doing propaganda, and he's on CNN. One of the networks that is known for spewing propaganda. So it's just really interesting the way that they talk about this. They're talking about this because they want you to be afraid. Here's the thing. If they decide to part from the US dollar, honestly, I can't be mad at them at this point. The reason why I can't be upset with them is because the United States has continued over decades to implement sanctions on countries, sometimes because of military reasons, but sometimes because of countries that they just blatantly disagree with their leadership, right? So this is why sometimes the US government will implement, wars against these countries to overthrow their leadership. They'll try to implement regime change. So sometimes the US does sanctions against other countries because of military reasons, and sometimes they do it just because they're being a troll. That's the best way I can sum that up. But if these countries move away from the US dollar, then the United States government cannot implement sanctions on them anymore. Are we supposed to be mad at those countries for making that decision? Are we supposed to expect them to just sit back and just let the US government continue to abuse them? No. At this point in time, they have every right to go their own way. The look on this guy's face says everything. And you know what they did here? I'm going to tell you something that they did. People want to talk about identity. Notice the reporter that they brought in to discuss this issue, to criticize China, obviously. Notice they brought in a reporter who just happens to be Asian. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that was on purpose. Because what CNN wants to do is they want to show the American people, see, even this Asian guy here, even he doesn't like what's happening with China. These are just little things that I pay attention to. We'll go back just a little bit more because I did cut them off.
military officers to China for training, for example, but also expanding its soft power through cultural investments and propaganda. One thing they're doing, Danny, is launching a show called Classics, quoted by Xi Jinping. So I'm
How dare they launch a show? No, China. You do not get the opportunity to partner up with these other countries and launch a show together. No, you guys can't do that. You see the problem with the U.S. dominance over the world?
sure they hope that's going to be a hit in Africa. Danny?
Wow. Stephen, thank you for that report. We appreciate it.
Boy, I tell you, it's so obvious now, right? Like when I used to watch news like years ago, especially when I was an undergrad, I didn't notice a lot of these things, but now it's just so obvious when you watch this so much. It's so obvious what they do and how they try to play to the audience. Now, I want you to hear this clip here. This is from Vijay Prashad. Now, you guys probably remember him from the Bernie movement. He's been very vocal. He does interviews from time to time as well. He had something to say about the Brics summit in South Africa. And he was on Democracy Now! So it says, today, a monumental Brics summit begins in South Africa. The Brics is an instrument to push forward their political views, which they feel are not taken seriously, particularly by the Western countries. So let's go ahead and bring in Vijay Prashad.
This is the 15th Brics summit, the first one in person since the summit in Brasilia in 2019, brings together heads of governments of these important countries. Yes, it's true. It's also the first Brics summit since the war began in Ukraine 18 months ago. It's important to recognize one of the reasons why this particular gathering is so important. You know, two of the Brics countries, Russia and China, are members of the Security Council. They are part of the P5, the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. It's important to point out that the 3 other members, Brazil, South Africa, and India, have long applied to be permanent members of the UN Security Council. In other words, to have a veto. There is no Latin American with a permanent seat on the Security Council. Brazil has asked for that seat. There is no African power on the Security Council with a permanent seat. South Africa has long lobbied for that position.
Why is that? These are some of the questions that I want us to start thinking about. Why is it that there's no Latin American country on the Security Council? Why is it that there's no African country on the Security Council? And we're not just talking about any Latin American country. We're talking about Brazil, a country that's a part of the global South, right? A country that has been heavily exploited by Western countries. And then we're talking about South Africa, right? South Africa has a long history of apartheid. We've talked about that oftentimes on this show. But why is it that they would not have countries from the global South or from Africa to have a seat on the Security Council? Why is that? When you think about Brics, I want you to think about this idea of a multipolar world. And that's what they're trying to accomplish. We have to get past these days of the US being the dominant power. And how about all of us come together, use our powers collectively, and create a sort of horizontal approach, a multipolar world, a world that will benefit all of our countries instead of one of us trying to be the dominant power. And that scares the life out of the US government. That scares the Biden administration. And to be honest with you, that would also scare the Trump administration as well. It doesn't matter if the president is a Republican or a Democrat. Regardless who comes into the White House from those two parties, they don't really want any other country to rise up and to have more power than the United States. That's why there is a lot of criticism towards China, and there's a lot of criticism towards Russia from the US government. Now, this is not to say that those countries are perfect. They're not. There's no such thing as a perfect country. But the US government doesn't want those countries to have significant power, period. Let's continue with Vijay.
And India is the country with the world's largest population and has for 20 years asked for a place at the Security Council. These are three very important powers that we, in the context of the war in Ukraine, have tried to put themselves forward. That is Brazil with a peace plan, South Africa with a plan that has come from leaders of African countries, and India taking a role through the Brics, but also the G20, trying to develop a peace plan. These are countries frustrated not to have a seat at the Security Council.
Let's pause here for a second. Notice that he mentioned they're trying to have a peace plan. Now, that's not something that the U.S. government really wants. As much as we continue to hear Biden, Anthony Blinken, Victoria Nuland, all of these U.S. puppets continue to talk about the war in Ukraine and continue to preach to us and tell us that we need to give more aid to Ukraine. You know what you don't hear them really talking about? You don't hear them talking about any type of peace. You don't hear them talking about coming to any type of collective peace, because the reality is they want to continue to support the military-industrial complex. This is more money for the MIC, and the MIC is in bed with the U.S. government. So no, they're not going to talk about peace. They don't want any peace. They want to overthrow Vladimir Putin. They want to remove him from that seat. They want to implement regime change in Russia, and they will continue to demonize Russia as long as he's in power. Actually, even if he's not in power, they'll continue to demonize them because where they are economically, the same thing with China. But you don't hear them talk about peace. And I'm supposed to believe, as an American, that these countries here coming together on this billboard, I'm supposed to believe that they're the problem. I'm supposed to believe that we're supposed to be afraid of them and they're the bad guy and they're the ones that are talking about peace. So when did peace become such a controversial thing to discuss?
And for them, the Brics is an instrument to push forward their political views, which they feel are not taken seriously, particularly by the Western countries, whom they feel have blocked them from permanent seats on the Security Council. So,
not taken seriously. Well, you know what happens sometimes when people or countries, companies, corporations, whatever, are not taken seriously? They do something to show you that they should be taken seriously.
I think if you're asking about the Ukraine war itself, it's important to see the Brics in the context of aspirations denied through the UN Security Council, also to some extent aspirations denied through the G20. During the financial crisis, when US banks went south, there was an argument made by G7 countries that if countries like India, China, Indonesia help liquefy Western banks, the G7 will be wrapped up and the G20 will take its place. That promise was also not put forward. It was not, in a sense, made real. And the G20 continues to meet, but it's still, in a sense, in the shadow of the G7. All these frustrated political ambitions of large countries like India, Brazil, and South Africa, these frustrations run through the Brics. And that's why this summit is so important. Lula is back on the world stage, committed to, particularly on the continent of Africa, which this Brazilian president takes very seriously.
And the last thing that the U.S. government wants is for another country or countries to help countries in Africa. Imagine what would happen if all these groups came together. I want to show you more. I want to show you some of the other countries that are actually asking to join Brics. Look at this. This is from S.L. Canton. S.L. Canton. BRICS summit in South Africa starts tomorrow. Brazil, President Lula has already landed. Chinese President Xi Jinping just left Beijing. Indian Prime Minister Modi will leave tomorrow morning. Russian President Putin will do video calls. U.S. media ready to publish endless fake news. 40 plus world leaders will be attending. Iranian leader Razi and Indonesia's Jokowi will be attending. New members? ? Take a look at this. Leaders of 23 nations officially expressed desire to join Brics. So dark blue here is the Brics. Those are the Brics countries. And light blue are the ones who expressed their desire to join Brics. I'm just going to mention it to you. Actually, it's actually bigger if I just do it like this. Here are some of the countries that are interested. Algeria, Argentina, Bangladesh, Bahrain, Belarus, Bolivia, Venezuela, Vietnam, Honduras, Egypt, Indonesia, Iran, Cuba, big one right there, ding, 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 Kazakhstan, Kuwait, Morocco, Nigeria, the UAE, Palestine. You see this, guys? Saudi Arabia, Senegal, Thailand, and Ethiopia. Now, what's really interesting, Saudi Arabia is an ally of the United States government. But even Saudi Arabia is wanting to partake in a multipolar world. What would this mean for the relationship that the U.S. has with Saudi Arabia? And if the U.S. government loses their relationship with Saudi Arabia, what does that mean in reference to oil? This is another reason why we need to move away from depending on some of these resources like oil, because that's really why we have the relationship that we have with Saudi Arabia to begin with. We want their oil. What would happen? You see all these countries willing to get on board? 23. Now, I'm not sure what happened to Mexico. Last year, when I covered Brics, at one point, Mexico was also interested. I'm not sure if they changed their mind, but they're not on this list. So to me, I don't know. I'm going to have to look into that to find out why they're not listed here anymore. Maybe they changed their mind. But still, that's besides the point. Because it goes to show you that more countries are no longer willing to sit back and to sit up here and to put up with the United States being a dominant power and considering that maybe they can all share their power collectively, a multipolar world. Now, I mentioned something about the U.S. basically not wanting any other country to have that sort of power. That actually comes from a particular doctrine, the Wolfowitz doctrine. I want to add this to the screen here. You see this gentleman here? This is Paul Wolfowitz. He's the one who sponsored the doctrine. They named it after Paul. Let me explain to you what this is. Let's go down here right to doctrine articles. The doctrine announces the U.S. status as the world's only remaining superpower following the collapse of the Soviet Union at the end of the Cold War, and proclaims its main objective to be retaining that status. Do you see this? Our first objective is to prevent the re-emergence of a new rival, either on the territory of the former Soviet Union or elsewhere. that poses a threat on the order of that posed formally by the Soviet Union. This is a dominant consideration underlying the new regional defense strategy and requires that we endeavor to prevent any hostile power from dominating a region whose resources would, under consolidated control, be sufficient to generate global power. Do you see this? Resources, hostile power. So any country that emerges as a new rival to the United States, the US government is going to paint them as hostile. They see them as hostile, especially if resources are involved. Now, there's another piece I want to show you here. U.S. primacy. The doctrine establishes the U.S. leadership role within the New World Order. The U.S. must show the leadership necessary to establish and protect a new order that holds the promise of convincing potential competitors that they need not aspire to a greater role or pursue a more aggressive posture to protect their legitimate interests. Do you see this? To convince other countries not to aspire to a greater role. In other words, they want those countries to just stay in their place. That's terrible. If you have not heard of the Wolfowitz Doctrine, there's so much more on this you can read. For the sake of time, I can't get into everything. But if you haven't heard of this, read about this. Check out Wolfowitz Doctrine. It'll explain a lot in reference to what's happening globally and the US government. I'm going to go to some of these comments here in the chat. Z Manny, congrats on your recent appearance on The Hill. Nice job. Thank you so much, Z Manny. Yeah, I was on Rising this morning, guys. I forgot to send that out today because I've been so busy, but I usually send, when I do appearances, I usually send them out via my newsletter. So I'll do that tomorrow. Thank you for the super chat, Jesse. Love your show, Sab. Ask Cornel West why he endorsed Biden in 2020 and why he has a new strategy this time. Thanks, Sabby. Keep being amazing. I did ask him that last time, right when he just announced. He said he did because at that time he actually saw Trump to be posed as a bigger threat. But he also said in that interview that he was wrong about Joe Biden. So that answers your other part of that question, new strategy this time. And also the way that they treated the Democratic Party, treated Bernie Sanders. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. Don't forget Utah. Thank you, Roger. I will have to do Utah on Thursday. But thank you so much for that. Just want to make sure I stay on time. Stay on time. I do have a surprise for you guys tonight. Rome, my comrade from Revolutionary Blackout Network, actually, I don't know if you guys saw it, but there was a documentary made about Rome. So those of us at RBN, we've known about it for a while, and we actually had access to it a couple of months ago. But Rome was actually just in Tennessee at an award ceremony for people who make film documentaries. And so Right Brain Studios did a phenomenal job. I'll show you a small piece of it tonight, but not all of it, because I want you to watch that documentary actually on RBN, but they did a phenomenal job. Okay. We're going to get into this story about Biden and Hawaii. So I have been complaining for quite some time that Joe Biden basically has just forgotten about people in Hawaii, that he abandoned the people, just like he abandoned people in East Palestine, Ohio. Recently, Joe Biden went to Maui, gave a speech. It was not good for Joe Biden. I'll give credit for him going there, but honestly, I don't know if I should give you credit for something that you're supposed to do that's part of your job anyway. And two, he still has yet to visit East Palestine, Ohio. And I think the reason why he still hasn't made his way there is because East Palestine, Ohio voted for Trump. He went to Hawaii because that's a blue state. Isn't that sad? That's the problem with partisan politics. But the residents of Maui have actually been very vocal. Some of them have been on TikTok. There have been independent reporters there covering their stories on the ground, and they have not been happy with Joe Biden, and they've actually had some things to say. Now, this first clip here is from Professor Zinkus. He says, if you call the residents of Maui voicing their frustration with Biden's federal response, Russian propaganda, then you're an effing racist. So let's hear this gentleman here, what he had to say in reference to the way the Biden administration responded.
So let us get back to our INA. We can survive. If the United States government will like help us, maybe Japan going, they love Hawaii. Maybe one other country, but it's if they can freaking take care of Ukraine, yeah? $40 billion go to Ukraine. Fucking shit ain't coming to us. What the fuck? My tax-paying money for 60 fucking years don't mean shit. But they're gonna take care of Ukraine, 40 fucking billion. So let us get back to our INA. We can survive. If the United States government will like help us, maybe Japan going, they love Hawaii. Maybe one other country, but it's if they can freaking take care of Ukraine, yeah? $40 billion go to Ukraine. Fucking shit ain't coming to us. What the fuck? My tax-paying money for 60 fucking years don't mean shit.
This is just one of the residents of Maui voicing his frustration. And honestly, can you blame him? We've been talking about this as well. The fact that there's billions and billions of dollars to send to Ukraine, but they're not sending that type of money to Hawaii. Hawaii is a state. I don't know how many times I have to say this, but Hawaii is a state, and those people have been forgotten. We also talked about the fact that some of these residents in Hawaii have already been questioned in reference to selling their land or realtors trying to take their land right after this tragedy, coming there not to help them, but to take something else away from them. And then there's also this issue here in reference to water and what the residents in Hawaii actually have control over. And I think people need to hear this. This is from Pelham. Bombshell. Kaylu Manuel, the deputy water commissioner, allowed corporations and millionaires to divert the streams and canals to fill the reservoirs that service its luxury developments. You guys see this? How they take care of the rich? Native Hawaiian communities have been fighting for their right to manage their own water and stop the exploitation. Ironically, new permit applications that locals had been fighting for were due to be submitted August 7th, the day before the Maui fires. Kaylu Manuel then held off allowing use of the water to save downtown Lahaina for 5 hours. Firefighters responded fast, but they soon ran out of water. You can clearly see in this video how water diversions saved the wealthy and allowed native Lahaina poor to be burnt to ashes. The canal separating the wealthy landowners was still full of water. Let's take a look at that video. I'm just turning the sound down here so we can talk over it. You see this? You see all the houses here along the shoreline? These are the wealthy homes, right? These are those $1 million homes. Not one of them damaged, not one. Somehow the fire decided we're going to skip over these. Look at the water. See the water? See the water? Protection for the rich. All that protection. So you can see all of that. And this is just, again, this is another case of the haves and the have-nots. This is who they protect. Everybody else is disposable. And that's what I want people to understand. If you're poor, they kind of see you as disposable. And then once we get away from the wealthy homes, destruction, fire, destruction, burnt to a crisp. You see, this is why, sometimes people, they get mad when I say I'm tired of the rich shit. Sometimes people get mad at me and say, well, it's not their fault that they're rich. It's not other people's fault that they're poor. But there is a difference between the way rich people are treated and poor people are treated, especially when it comes to resources. That's just one example to show you. I want you to hear from this couple in Hawaii that said that Biden failed them. Now they struggled to survive in the water. This couple right here. Listen to this.
Know that, and you both survived something unreal. You lost your home, survived for hours in that ocean, and I know so many of our viewers were touched by you telling your wife, if I start drowning, save yourself. I know that it is a really, really long road, no matter what. And you told our team that you feel authorities are not being transparent, specifically about the number of children who have died. Can you tell me more about that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're constantly hearing about children that were hugging their parents, being stuck in the car, children that were off of school, that were, home alone. And then every time locals, even the media, try to ask our governor just, an estimate of how many children are out there, they're refusing to answer questions like that. So
we're going to pause here for a second. So here's a couple who is there. They live there, and they're telling you that the media, more so mainstream media, they're basically not being honest about how many people are missing, but more so the children that are missing. And I want to show you something. Look at this picture. You see this picture with the cars? Did you guys notice all of these cars here, the doors are closed? If the doors of the cars are closed, what does that tell you? What happened to the people? Right? So I've heard different opinions about this. People are like, oh yeah, people got out and they ran. Really? If people got out of these cars and they ran, why are all the doors still closed? Now I'm supposed to think there's a fire coming, wildfire coming. You opened the door and got out of the car and you took the time to shut the door of the car? Someone explain this to me. These people were burned. That makes no sense to me. I looked at a lot of these pictures. And so for the people telling me, see, these people fled their cars. What people? All the doors are closed. I have seen enough zombie attack movies in my lifetime, okay, to know what these cars should look like versus what they do look like if the people ran away. Let's continue.
So it's just sad that they're trying to hide so much from us, and especially about the children. It's really, really sad. We feel fortunate because we have a 4-year-old and she wasn't with us that day. They need to be more transparent, and we feel like they're just kind of throwing the blame in other places, dodging questions. When somebody asked our mayor the other day, like, just give us an estimate of how many children, he got confrontational. And we don't need somebody that's confrontational with locals that are just trying to get answers. All we want is answers, and just to know, things went wrong and they happened, and, that you're still helping us and you do care about us. Not if we complain to you, you're going to verbally attack us or do things. We shouldn't feel that way. We went through a lot. Everybody else went through a lot.
Yeah.
So they're verbally attacking the survivors. Isn't this crazy?
I hear the frustration. And Mike, you've also said that you feel the government just doesn't care about the people of Maui. Tell me more about that.
We feel like it's kind of protecting their own butts right now. We feel that we're not very political people. We really don't go one way or the other. But Biden has really failed us. He when something like this, one of the worst disasters in U.S. history happens, he hasn't been out here, and it's been 2 weeks on Tuesday. What kind of president does that? And then the FEMA, giving some people, $700. We didn't get the $700, and we're not complaining about that. But giving people that just $700 to survive when they just lost everything, their clothes, their family members, is insulting.
I'm going to pause here for just a second because I want to say something. He may not care that he didn't get that $700, but I care. Yes, there should have been way more than that. Yes, it is absolutely insulting. But this just goes to show you not even everybody got the $700. And the reason why I wanted you to hear from this couple is because they don't swing either way politically. They're not saying they're Republicans. They're not saying they're Democrats. They're just like, where the hell is the president? And why are you only giving people $700?
People need more help. And we're seeing all this money being donated to other countries, billions of dollars, and we're not getting that help. They're more concerned with their political agendas in other locations when they should be taking care of Hawaii, which we are part of the U.S. We pay taxes. It's not right to do this to us. They need to care more.
You better preach. See, it's all coming out now. It's all coming out. This is why I'm so glad that News Nation had reporters there. They were able, because they actually have people there on the ground. They were able to send people there so you get to hear their perspective, and all the other independent outlets that actually have reporters there on the ground. It's very tricky now because from what I hear, they're not letting some people in to certain parts now too. But I just got to say, because you see, some people who you're going to hear from later on tonight, like Harry Sisson, the guy, the kid who attacked Brianna Joy Gray, he's basically saying on Twitter that people who are criticizing Biden for the $700 and making the talking points like this gentleman is making, he's basically saying that those people are Trumpers. But yet here's a couple right here who does not swing either way politically. One more piece here.
I do know, and I hear you, and I appreciate your perspective so much. And I hope you know as well, the last time you were on our show, hundreds of thousands of our viewers watched your story, and they are just sending both of you so much love and so much heart. And I know that devastation is turning to frustration and anger, and I hear it, and I'm grateful that you're sharing it with us. Mike and Andresa Chiquino, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so I want to say something here that I think that's important for people to hear. News Nation, yeah, they're on YouTube, but News Nation almost has 1 million subscribers. So when she said that hundreds of thousands of people got a chance to hear your story, oh yeah, this got out. This got out. More people are hearing what's happening to people in Hawaii. I mean, this is the second time they've been on. They were on before. And then there's this story here. This young woman was on CNN. And I want you to see the look on Caitlin's face, because she seems to have this disturbed look on her face. Like, I don't know, maybe that's just her face. Maybe she just has that look. But I want you to hear what this girl says here. Listen to this.
Right now, the Maui community is helping the Maui community. And it's really affected me, because where's the president? He decides to come here this week, to come here next week. I mean, like, where aren't we Americans too?
Notice she said, aren't we American too? Mm-hmm.
Hawaii trip, sir?
No, not now. I'm going to be leaving. I'll be there on Monday.
Why is it important that you go?
Thank you.
Sir, on the family issue.
This is Joe Biden's Hurricane Katrina. It really is. Now, Joe Biden eventually did make it there. And boy, he made some comments that I think shows that he does not know how to read the room. Here's a clip here of Joe Biden. Now, this is posted by Simon Etaba. He's one of the White House reporters. He said Biden brings up the death of his first wife and daughter in 1972 while speaking in Maui, where at least 850 people are still missing and more than 100 have perished. Listen to this, guys.
America's deadliest wildfire in over a century. And Jill and I have what's left, walk Front Street, what's left of it. We've surveyed the damage from the air as well. The devastation is overwhelming. To date, 114 dead, hundreds of people unaccounted for. I remember when I got the call, my first wife and daughter. I was a young senator, and I got a call in Washington. I hadn't been sworn in yet. I wasn't old enough. And I was hiring staff in the Capitol at Teddy Kennedy's office. And I got a phone call saying from my fire department, and a young first responder kind of panicked. You got to come home. There's been an accident. I said, what happened? He said, your wife, she's dead. Come home. Come home. The tractor trailer had broadsided her and killed her in a car accident along with my little daughter. And I remember all the way down from Washington home wondering what a lot of people here are wondering. What about my two boys? How are they? They were in the car. I never got a read on that. Were they going to be all right? They were badly injured. Were they going to make it? Had they made it? Wasn't until I walked into the emergency room that I saw that they were there. The difference between knowing somebody's gone and worrying whether they're available to come back are two different things. You know, and I remember one of the people who helped me.
You know, it's just read the room. I don't understand how you can compare the two. You have the largest wildfire in the U.S. history, and he's comparing it to when he got the news that his wife passed away and his sons passed away. This is not the same thing. But it gets worse because he also made another comparison. Listen to this. Joe Biden compares the suffering of Maui victims to the time he had a small kitchen fire. I almost lost my 67 Corvette and my cat.
I don't want to compare difficulties, but we have a little sense, Jill and I, what it's like to lose a home. Years ago, now 15 years ago, I was in Washington doing Meet the Press. It was a sunny Sunday. And lightning struck at home on a little lake that's outside of our home, not a lake, a big pond, and hit a wire and came up underneath our home into the heating ducts, the air conditioning duct. To make a long story short, I almost lost my wife, my 67 Corvette, and my cat. But all kidding aside, I watched the firefighters, the way they responded.
The Corvette part really did it for me because most of the people that lost their homes, as we showed you multiple times on this show, most of those people working class or poor. Just the sheer fact that Joe Biden actually owned a Corvette lets you know that even if his house burned, he has the money and I'm pretty sure the insurance to make sure he gets another house.
No, there's an old expression. I grew up right across the street from a fire hall in Claymont, Delaware. And the expression...
I can't. So another clip that I do want to show you is that there's actually a fundraiser happening for Ukraine in Hawaii. I can't make this up. And we got to give a huge shout out to Joe here. He's the one that makes those really fun clips that you guys like to watch so much. Jimmy usually shows those clips. There's a fundraiser for Ukraine going on in Hawaii. I kid you not. Saturday, August 26th, Ukraine Independence Day event. Magic Island. A la Mona Beach Park from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Sunset gathering to follow. Hawaii stands with Ukraine, Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. And look down here. Here's the little for you to volunteer, donate. Why are you asking people to donate money to Ukraine when the US government is already taking care of that very well, instead of donate money to people in Hawaii who just lost their homes? You know, read the room. It's the optics of it. What else? What more money do you need anyway? How dare you come to somebody else's disaster and ask for money? Let me pause here. Hold on the music. Here it is. Watch this. Watch this. Let me pause. Hold on. Watch. You've got to be kidding me. But I'm not kidding.
I'm Natalia Andrievska. I'm a Ukrainian dancer and a teacher. I would like to welcome everyone to Alamona Park for our event to commemorate Independence Day of Ukraine. You will be introduced to Ukrainian traditional dances like hopak, which represents merry spirit of Ukrainians. Also,
people just lost their homes and lost everything that all their belongings. I don't think people are really trying to learn no dance. This is just, again, read the room.
And merry spirit of Ukrainians. Also, another dance would be from Carpathian Mountains in Ukraine, named Dudariki, which translates wooden flute musician, who usually attracts many dancers. So welcome to have fun with us. Glory to Ukraine. Slava Ukraini.
Like, I can't make this up. Really? Talk about bad timing. And then there was also this, Joe Biden falling asleep. Like, this is just, you can't make this up. Now, Biden appears to fall asleep during a ceremony in Hawaii honoring Maui fire victims. So here's Joe Biden right here. Look at this.
Never met before. We are a community that relies on family, on ohana, whether by blood or by friendship. But like many others, my son's home burned down. My daughter's home burned down. My home burned down. My parents of 59 years home never meant to.
He didn't fall asleep when he met with Zelensky. Guys, this is embarrassing. It's embarrassing. Like, this is the president of the United States. You can't tell me that Joe Biden is fit to serve as president again for another 4 years. You can't tell me. And the people just trying to push this and push him and say, no, Joe Biden's great. You got to keep Joe Biden. I'm like, are they seeing the same thing that I'm seeing? The people who are saying that nobody should primary challenge Joe Biden, that nobody should run against Joe Biden, that we should just reelect Joe Biden because he's already there. He can't. Joe Biden is asleep. If you want to help people in Hawaii, and I told you guys before, because people like Obama have been telling people to donate to the Red Cross. And I told you, don't donate to the Red Cross because the Red Cross is notorious for raising a lot of money and not doing much with that money. And the earthquake in Haiti is a good example. Hurricane Katrina is a good example. Donate directly to the people. There are multiple GoFundMes that are set up by people in Hawaii. You can donate directly to them so that money gets to them. Thank you for the super chat, Laugh66. Ask Vijay and Shama when they'll push back on anti-Chinese rhetoric in Indian government / media. China brought hundreds of millions out of poverty. India has not. Indian leaders hate they are being shown up. Interesting. Well, next time Shama comes on, I can ask her that. I have not interviewed Vijay, actually. Zombie in the air says, LOL. Yeah, you like the zombie rhetoric? Fat Mantive says CSI Hawaii 5-0 Sabby Sabs edition. Yeah, it's just I've seen so many those CSI shows too. CSI, Law and Order. Like I've watched so many of those shows and a lot of zombie movies. Like, come on. All the doors were closed. Thank you for the super chat, Dwayne. Biden is still fiddling like Nero while Maui burned. Excuse me. But he doesn't care because he doesn't care. Machu says, OMG, I never thought about the closed doors. Yeah. That was the first thing I noticed when I saw all those pictures of people were sharing on TikTok first and then on Twitter. And they're like, all these people ran away. And I'm like, all the doors are closed. I don't know. Thank you for the super chat, Dwayne. F you and your cat and your Corvette, Brandon. And shout out to Delthea, who's been a member for 24 months. Biden's loss was then, this is now, and these people don't need to hear about Biden's past. They need for him to hear them now. That's right. I mean, it's just. And thank you so much, Red Rebel Dragon, for the super sticker. Yeah, it's just, these are the kind of times where I don't know what to say, but it's embarrassing. I really do think it's embarrassing. If you have not had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button, guys. That helps me out with the algo. Thank you very much. Kudos to you. Just going to check really quick. Okay, cool. Based. And I'm just going to check the. Okay, cool. Sorry, I was checking something on my phone. Okay, cool. Bet. Yeah, but it's just one of those things where I'm just like, anyway, thank you so much. And don't forget to also sub and share, especially if you are new. Yep. I think I have a little bit of time. Eric, can we move over to the second part of the tight VNC? Thank you. Thank yous. I got a little bit more time before Dr. West comes in. So I'm going to go ahead and show this really quick before he comes in. As I told you guys before, Rome, there was a documentary made about him. I think they filmed this last year. And I actually had the opportunity to see this earlier before it was uploaded on YouTube because those of us at RBN had access to the documentary ahead of time, right? I'm not going to show you the whole documentary. I'm going to show you one little clip of it that I think you need to see. It's called Rome, Death to America. You guys have to see this, especially if you think you know about Detroit. You don't know. What was that show that used to come on MTV? They used to say, if you think you know, you have no idea. I forget the name of it, but they used to say that. But this is Rome, and Rome does tour for the poor. He does a lot, for people in the community. He does a lot of mutual aid. Rome is one of the people that really inspired me to do more for people and mutual aid and things like that. So I want you to hear something that Rome says here about the houses and the homes and the way that Detroit was destroyed, and not by the people, but by the state, by the government. Listen to this.
Looking out this picture window, I used to see beautiful houses, grass cut, flowers, children playing. We had great neighbors, everybody socializing with each other. But we're never gonna get them times back. They took them away from me for a reason, man. I took y'all to James, took y'all to Cedar Grove. Like this area that we are in right now was a blood control area. But we was a little bit younger. We was a little bit younger than the generations that was Bloods. We went a different route. It wasn't really just because people wanted to be different. It's because we was victimized by Bloods, you know what I'm saying? This is 11852 Menden. We was rappers, gangbangers, activists, all in this house. A lot of my people joined Crips, and I was, me and my cousin was GD. Me and him got jumped in about 16 years old. We had gang fights. We had gang fights in front of this house. We had gang fights on this lawn, in front of this house, on the corner, et cetera, et cetera. We never let anything happen. You know what I'm saying? We never let somebody come and shoot up the houses, hurt anybody. Like, this is one of the nicest blocks. Even though we was gangbangers, when me and CT get together and we actually get a hold on Kami's cuts, we can keep this yard together. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully I can get a deal with the city to where, to when, if they ever knock the house down, I have first dibs on at least getting the plot.
Okay, guys. So that is Rome's documentary on RB. And again, if you have not seen this, you guys need to watch it. I think the whole thing's about 47 minutes, but that's on RBN. Check it out. It's really good. The guys at Right Brain Studios did a really good job, and it was nominated for an award. I have to check in with Rome and see how it did there, but I know he spoke at the ceremony. All right, Dr. West is here. I'm ready whenever you are, Dr. West. All right, I'll bring you in.
My wonderful folk in Mississippi, we were going at it. I said, I got to get Sister Sabby now. Ain't no doubt about that. But, oh, what a blessing to see you.
All right, Dr. West. So, guys, Dr. West is back. For those of you, I'm sure you all know this. We've talked about it oftentimes, but Dr. West is running for president for 2024 through the Green Party. Dr. West, the last time you were here, there were less rumblings than there are now. Like, obviously, you're getting a lot more attention than you did at first when you've announced, and also to the point where I saw this recently. Someone sent this to me. You are actually having a rally coming up in Jackson, Mississippi. This is August 25th. So I want to hear a little bit about that, this rally that's coming up this week.
Oh, indeed. But I first want to begin by saluting you, my dear sister, for your courage, your vision, your brilliance, your consistency that me and Anahita, we watch you religiously and regularly, and we are inspired and empowered by your words and your deeds. And this is very important because, we cutting so radically against the grain that we got to recognize that we in this together. Solidarity really matters. And I want to say that to you directly. Now, it's true. I was just with my precious folk down in Mississippi. That's why I'm running a little late, because it's not so much a launching, but it is my first public event. And I wanted to begin with the magnificent brothers and sisters in gut bucket, sophisticated, unbelievable Mississippi. Why? Because Emmett Till's family is having the memorial. And so I'm really going as a servant. I'm not going in and as some presidential candidate focused on a campaign. No. I'm coming in to learn, listen with a humility and a genuine sense of acknowledging the greatness of those folk in Mississippi, not just the Emmett Tills, but we talking about Medgar Evers and, of course, Fannie Lou Hamer and so many others. We ain't got the Sam Cooke born in Clarksdale. Ooh, or Reverend C.L. Franklin, Aretha's fathers who born in Mississippi, or David Ruffin from Why Not, Mississippi, and the Delta that produced the greatest art form of the 20th century, which is the blues, with Son House and Robert Johnson and others that Ma Rainey and Bessie Smith would pick up on. So I wanted to start in Mississippi to get my soul right.
Yeah, so this goes back to the movement building, because I think some people, enough time has passed where, I hate to say it, but like Flint, Michigan, I feel like some people have forgotten about the people in Jackson, Mississippi and the water crisis that they've had to go through.
That's exactly. And you know what happened to our dear brother Eddie Jenkins and Michael Parker, the brutalization that's taken place, the guilty verdict. And so I'll be there with Brother Malik Shabazz. I'm going to be there with Brother Walker, the lawyer. I'm going to be there with my dear brother Raheem Muhammad. I'm going to be there with Coach Andrew Campbell. I'm going to be there with Sister Priscilla Sterling, who's part of the Teal family. It's a united front that is concerned about ensuring that we never forget about not so much the murder of our dear brother Emmett Till, but the dignity of Emmett Till and the magnificent vision and courage of his mother, Mom.
Mm-hmm. So that is, again, for people, I just want to reiterate here, that is...
Now, this particular rally is really, that's something I'm kind of pushing aside, because it turns out that same moment they wanted me to be at the museum for the film itself. And so I've actually shifted now and said, no, I'm there mainly to be a servant in terms of being at the museum. We're going to be at New Hope Baptist Church on Sunday. We're having a magnificent gathering at the Black Brothers in the afternoon. We're having a hearing in Randall, Rankin County. That's where it is, Rankin County. And it's also a tribute to my pastor, Reverend Willie P. Cook, who baptized me 62 years ago. He's from Brookhaven, Mississippi, right where Lamar Smith was shot down like a dog. But just like Mamie Till and the others, don't have a minute to hate. I pursue justice for the rest of my life. We gonna keep alive a tradition, a great tradition of a great people. And Mississippi, in many ways, has been ground zero when you really think about it for Black people. The blackest state. Black folk have probably caught more hell in Mississippi. I know South Carolina is competitive, and Georgia too. But black folk have caught more hell in Mississippi. And anytime you're targeted in that way from the powers that be, you know you're a threat. You know you're a threat, because when you wake up and organize and straighten your back up and bear witness to a love that hatred can never suffocate and crush, then, oh, lo and behold, you got something. And we know there is no Black Chicago without Mississippi. We won't get into that right now, but Black Chicago is basically a Mississippi affair. No doubt. Thank God for Curtis Mayfield. Thank God for Dinah Washington and all of the others. But it is a very much a Mississippi thing. I think Dinah actually may have been Alabama, but I mean Mississippi is disproportionately shaping of the great genius of the Black folk on the south side and west side of Chicago. So I'm just very blessed to be there and to begin. And that's why I'm just blessed to have, thank God, a fire that all the lies can never put out. You know what I mean? When you have a certain kind of intensity of calling that all the bows and arrows and even the bullets can't stop. Because you got a joy inside of you that the joy can't take away. You got a commitment to justice that nobody can undermine, nobody can alleviate. And that's a beautiful thing, because that frees you up. It frees you up. And you recognize whatever faults and foibles you have, all of us have them. But at the same time, when I think of this brother right here, John Coltrane, when I think of those who came before, who poured so much in us, I think of your mama. I think of my mama. Think of your daddy. Think of my daddy. And of course, think of your blessed husband and others who love you. Love is a deeply human thing. It cuts all the way down through our hearts and minds and souls. That's what keeps us going. It's not about some narrow conception of politics and an election. It's about a movement that connects to the wretched of the earth in Africa and in Latin America and the Caribbean. We got to be truth tellers and justice seekers, no matter how they try to fit us into these little narrow debates about two parties and narrow debates about being a spoiler of a rotten system and narrow debates about how you're going to fit in and relate to some narrow Black leadership that doesn't want to tell the truth, that's on the gravy train rather than the love train in so many instances. I still love them. They're just so loud. I love sellouts. I'm a Christian. I love everybody. Everybody can bounce back, but you got to tell the truth.
Well, speaking of, and this interesting, because like speaking of telling the truth, so we predicted that this would happen because you're running as a third party candidate. Even if you were running in the Democratic Party, they would do this too, because Joe Biden, Democrat, sitting in the White House. So recently, you did respond to this on Twitter, but I want to get your your response here for the audience as well. So obviously
Absolutely.
ABC News, and it actually started with the Daily Beast. They put out a smear piece against you saying that you owe $500,000 in taxes and in child support. And I just want to give you the opportunity to respond to this yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, one, it was, of course, the lie about the commitment to my children. You see, that to me is fighting words. That the depth of my love and commitment to my children has been a fundamental motivation in my life, and so that particular lie had to hit head on. And my precious daughter's mother's been the first one. She's called a number of the folk to tell them how big a lie that is. Now, I've always said that I'm broke as the Ten Commandments financially because money doesn't mean that much to me. That when I do get it, it usually flows rather quickly because I've got a number of different obligations, a number of different debts. And so in that sense, when we talk about the taxes, it's true, but I always have agreements in place so that I'm able to keep moving. And those agreements are very real. Those agreements are very concrete. Like 63% of my precious fellow citizens in the country, I live from paycheck to paycheck. Absolutely. I've been blessed. My paychecks are bigger. Ain't no doubt about that than most of my fellow citizens. But my debts are bigger too. No doubt about that too. So that in that regard, all they're trying to do is to kind of hit you below the belt with these ad hominem attacks. Somehow this is an attack on my character. No, I've always been broke, and I'll probably be broke the day I die. I put on my cemetery clothes every day. I'm coffin ready every day. I know if I'm telling the truth about a hated people, black love is a crime in a white supremacist world. I know that. I'm just willing to bear that cost and that cross. Not because I'm so good. This ain't no vanity project. He's a narcissist. He's concerned. No, not at all. I find great joy in telling the truth that focuses on the least of these because I come out of Shiloh Baptist Church and I come out of being shaped by the Black Panther Party and I come out of a conception of moral and spiritual greatness that sits at the core of who Fannie Lou Hamer was and Martin Luther King Jr. was. That's my standards. That's like playing the saxophone, and Charlie Parker and Coltrane are the standards. Or trying to sing a song, and Aretha Franklin and Mahalia Jackson are the standards. That vision of greatness fundamentally informs my own sense of calling. It's true in the classroom. It's true when I go to jail. It's true when I'm on the streets. It's true when I go to church, and I'm a hang loose Baptist, so it's true when I'm in the nightclub doing my thing.
I think what some people may not, what some people may assume. Some people may assume because they see you on TV, because you're a professor, you're an author. I think that some people may assume, well, Cornel West is probably making a lot of money, so why is it that he would still owe taxes or child support, etc. What I tried to explain to people the other day is that just because you have a balance doesn't mean you don't have some type of payment arrangement or whatever in place, especially when it comes to taxes, because I know a lot of people have like a payment arrangement in place. But also, that being said, I think it's important for people to understand that it is not uncommon when you are coming from particularly the Black community, and let's say you are the first one in the family to, I know this from experience, if you're the first one in the family to go to college, get the college education, and to get like that professional career, it is not uncommon that you then in turn will try to help out other people, whether it's in your family or in the community as well. In other words, like, you're going to pay it forward. So for me, for example, my aunt helped me out. She was the first to go to college. I was the first to actually finish. And then I helped my sister. Yeah. So I think this is something that a lot of people may not understand, especially if you're coming from families where you don't have like that generational wealth, or you don't have a legacy in your family at some of these colleges, especially when you're the first to go. Everybody kind of looking at you. And then, of course, you want to help people as well. So what I want people to understand is, just because you may be making a lot more than some of us, that still doesn't mean that you don't have debts that you have to tend to as well. But I feel like this smear that they have actually put towards you, if you weren't running as a third party candidate, or if you weren't running a president at all, nobody was trying to look up this information. So they did this to Matt Taibbi. Matt Taibbi was just here recently, and the IRS came to his house. So I was asking him about that as well.
No,
So
it's very real. It's very real. And I do believe that all of us ought to pay our fair share of taxes, and especially the top 1%, because most of them pay very, very little. Some of them don't pay anything at all. But back to your point, I have to acknowledge that. I mean, the fees and liabilities when you get behind does push you into a pit. That's very real. And I must say that, I did have waves of audits, and I always wondered, what was going on. I got a call. I got a knock on my door Christmas Eve with a subpoena to pay my taxes, right before Santa Claus gonna show up the next morning. I'm thinking, like, how come you all can't wait until after the holiday is over? Why? Well, it was just sense that we keeping track of you. Okay, I understand it. And they've been kind enough to be open to the agreements, and I've followed through the agreements the best that I can, and therefore I continue in the process of paying my taxes like every citizen should, or at least so chooses. I mean, you got some Quakers and others that might not want to pay their taxes because too much going to war. Well, I understand that argument, but generally speaking, for me, I'm committed to paying. But I do recognize that anybody, Brother Matt or anybody else, it could be, a number of voices out there speaking the truth, that there is a certain kind of folk keeping track of what you're saying and what's going on that you can't be naive about. You don't know exactly for sure, but you can't be naive about it. But most importantly, you can't be preoccupied with that. You got to focus on the strength that you have. And I come from a biblical tradition. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these other things will be added to you, which is to say, as long as you're true to your calling, somehow you will be able to keep going and gain access to resources, even if you broke the 10 Commandments every month, every year. And that's been true for me for 50 years now, you see. 50 years.
I think one of the questions that did come my way in reference to the child support is, I think some people may have wondered if your children are adults now. Some people are asking,
yes, absolutely.
Some people are asking, like, why do you even have? How could you have to pay child support if your kids are adults?
Well, that's why it's a lie. That case was closed a long time ago, and not only that, but I am of the disposition that I do far beyond what is required for my children. That's just what it is to be a West. You know what I mean? That's what it is to be shaped by my family and so forth. So that's why that was probably the most troubling and disturbing aspect of the lies. But, Sister Sabby, more lies ought to come. There's no doubt about it. You got to fortify yourself. You got to be armed. You got to put on the full armor, as Ephesians 6 says. And most importantly, you can't be discouraged. You can't. They're trying to somehow steal some of your fire, and they're trying to somehow lessen some of your commitment. Whereas for me, it's the opposite. Gives me more fire, gives me more background, gives me more willingness to speak the truth. But it also, I begin to see in a very concrete way, in a personal manner, just how rotten the system is. That they're really not concerned about what I'm pointing to. I'm pointing to mass incarceration and the brothers and sisters disproportionately black and brown there. I'm pointing to the hoods and the ghettos and the reservations. I'm pointing to working people who are being pushed against the wall. That's what I'm pointing to. With the discourse about these particular taxes and so forth, take us away from that. And I do believe that's why I addressed it and so forth. But you can imagine, you see, The Democratic Party, the last thing they want is to be measured by the degree to which they have delivered for poor people, delivered for working people, delivered for those folk in various parts of the world who are subjugated by U.S. imperial policies from the vantage point of Palestinians or anybody else. And I myself am committed to never, ever selling any oppressed people down the river. I don't care what color, I don't care what gender, I don't care what nation, and so forth. It could be Dalits in India, it could be Roma in Europe, it could be Jews in Russia, it could be Palestinians on the West Bank, it could be black folk in Harlem, it could be poor white in Appalachia, it could be Spanish speaking in East Los Angeles, it could be Asians in Minneapolis. That's what it is to try to be a love warrior and a freedom fighter. That's what Martin was about. That's what Malcolm was about. That's what Fannie Lou was about and Ella Baker was about. We'll never reach their level of greatness. We know what the standards are. And so we look at ourselves through the lens of those standards. And they're beautiful standards. Vito Marcantonio, the great Italian brother who was a lawyer for W.B. Du Bois, is one of the greatest freedom fighters of the 20th century. Well, he's tied to Italy. You ain't lying. Because the Italians got some serious brothers and sisters tied to truth-telling and justice-seeking. So is true with the Irish. So is true with the English. So is true with the Belgian Congo brothers. So is true with the South Africans. So is true with the Lithuanians, the Ethiopians, the Guatemalans, the Mexicans. It is a human thing, but the sad thing is most of human history is the history of hatred and greed and domination and subjugation. So we're trying to create those moments of interruption. And that's what love does. That's what justice does. And democratic experiments, when poor people and working people have self-determination, that creates new possibilities vis-a-vis domination, subjugation, exploitation. But we know, unfortunately, very sadly, that the powers that be, they're mighty. They're not almighty, but they're mighty. And they try to crush folk. So when people say, "Oh, Brother West, you're a threat," I hear Brother Carvel and hear Brother Axelrod and Sister John Wash and others. "Oh, you a threat to our status quo." I say, you don't say. That's a wonderful thing. That's one of the things I'm trying to do. Not because the focus is on me, because you're crushing people. Because people are not able to live lives of dignity. I'm just pointing that out. I'm just a vessel. I'm just a vehicle. I'm just a conduit of a great tradition of a great people. That's all.
That's right. So, I totally get where you're coming from, but, I got to ask.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. And I appreciate you, because that's part of your integrity as a critical thinker, as well as a lover of Black people, oppressed people, struggling folk, trying to live lives of dignity. So we appreciate what you do, Sister Sabby.
So speaking of threat, I don't know if you've seen this. I'm going to show you two polls tonight. This first one that I want to show you, this is the Economist /YouGov poll. So this was August 12th through August 15th. And I want to show you this because this is very telling. This is obviously after you announced this number was not the same before. If an election for president was going to be held now and the Democratic nominee was Joe Biden and the Republican nominee was Donald Trump, who would you vote for? I want you to show you other. This is very telling. When we look at other, if we go all the way over to African Americans, 10% of African Americans said they would choose other, not Joe Biden or Donald Trump. And I wanted to show you this, Dr. West, because this is the poll that Simone Sanders and Caitlin from CNN and Anderson Cooper and all those guys, they are not showing people this poll, but I can guarantee you the DNC has probably seen this, and that is what they are afraid of. That is why they consider you to be a threat. If they showed this poll to their viewers, people would say, oh my God, 10% of African Americans. And just to show people something else, if we were to look at Donald Trump, 17% of African Americans said they would vote for Trump. If you add the two together, that's 27%. Then we have 13% of African Americans that said they would not vote. But what I think the Democratic Party is more afraid of, and why they keep telling people you're a spoiler or you're going to give us Donald Trump, is because you're in double digits here. African Americans will not vote for Joe Biden or Donald Trump. They will vote for other. And that is why I believe they're coming after you. I think it's important for people to see those numbers.
That's a powerful point. I know you made that last night. Me and Anahita were checking you out last night. That was the first time I ever seen that. I don't know anybody else who actually has access to that. I don't know how you got access to that. But that's the kind of investigation that you do of a high level. But no, if it's 10% now, shoot, by Christmas it might be 15, maybe 20. Why? Because people are making choices. Biden and the Democratic Party don't own black people's vote. They don't own anybody's vote. You earn it. You earn it.
Right.
Present your case. Lay out your vision. See what people, how they respond. Now, as you know, over 40% of our fellow citizens don't vote at all.
Yeah.
I'm going to them. 1 out of 8 of those who supported Trump supported Brother Bernie. I'm going to Trump country, as I've said from the very beginning. Trump followers are not gangsters like him, not all of them. They're not all neo-fascists like him. They cannot stand the arrogance and the haughtiness of the Democratic Party. They can't stand the hypocrisy of it, and they can't stand the indifference of the professional managerial class to the plight of those who never went to college. What's the percent of the folk in our country that never went to college? 60-some%.
Yeah.
And their lives are just as precious as lives at Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Berkeley, University of Chicago. And so in that sense, things are really movable. There's no doubt about that. They're movable. Trump showed that with the Republican Party's establishment. He shattered that establishment. And now their former social base significantly, not exclusively, followed the neo-fascist Pied Piper. The Democratic Party's establishment has yet to undergo that kind of full erosion, but it is happening. So all the litmus tests of the establishment. That's why you get so many progressives come along, and they come in so full of fire in the Democratic Party. We're going to be revolutionaries and subversives. We're going to transform these folk. And after 2.5 years, you say, ooh, what happened to your fire? You used to be so strong talking about the humanity of the Palestinians. Now you can't say a mumbling word when 550 of those babies are killed in 50 years and you were on fire, and now you can't say nothing? What's going on? You used to be more critical of Wall Street. Now it's just a rhetorical gesture. You used to be more critical of the anti-democratic processes in the Democratic Party. Now you're siding with their mainstream. Hey, this is the Keith Sweat moment. Something just ain't right.
Yep.
Let's call this out. I'm not demonizing anybody. I'm simply saying accountability, the kind of thing you do every night, is crucial. Answerability, fundamental. Responsibility, unescapable. And that's the kind of thing people are tired of, though, my dear sister.
Yeah.
They're tired of it,
One of the biggest concerns that Americans have right now is the economy, right? Because of inflation. Every week I've gone to the grocery store, the prices are higher every week, it seems like. And I think a lot of people, when they're polled, they say that their number one issue is the economy. They're not happy with the Biden administration's economic policies. So one of the questions that I have in reference to policy, what would you do differently if you were president? What would your economic policy look like?
I mean, one thing, I would shatter the kind of chatter you get among the intellectuals who are trying to rationalize Biden's economic policy, saying this is the best that it gets. 3% unemployment. People ought to be happy. He's the greatest figure since FDR. And I said, when was the last time you walked the street? I live on 110th Street in Harlem. So when I walk out of my building, I'm walking over some of the precious homeless brothers and sisters. When is the last time you actually went in the workplace and saw the speed up and saw the unbelievable cutbacks and saw the unbelievable escalation of monies at the top for CEOs and so forth. So don't tell us how magnificent the economy is because you trot out some statistics that are unconcerned about the struggling human beings who are beneath those statistics. So what does that mean then? It means we need massive investment, and it doesn't take a rock scientist really to make this point. We need massive investment in human beings in the form of Medicare for all, and free college tuition and education, decent housing, social housing, public housing, jobs with a living wage, escalating the minimum wage to a living wage of 20 and 22 and 25, and massive slashing of military spending because you can't separate foreign policy from domestic policy.
That's right.
But Brother Martin said if those bombs dropped in Vietnam, land in ghettos, what he meant was not just guns versus butter, but he meant a militarizing orientation to problems. That's how you get Cop City. You already got militarized police department. Now you want to militarize it more with tremendous investment in military. But where's the concern about the mental health of the brothers and sisters? Where's the concern about housing? Where's the concern about quality relations within community? How do you push back the guns? How do you push back the hopelessness? And yet military expansion deeply affirmed by both parties, just like Wall Street profit affirmed by both parties. So that I come in talking about old Martin Luther King Jr. stuff. Let's abolish poverty. Oh my God, that's what, how much would it take? Well, about 210 billion or so. That's nothing compared to the trillions of dollars we spend on military. Let's abolish homelessness. Let's make sure that quality education is available, not in rhetoric, but in massive investment. Biden provides wonderful investment in infrastructure. He marginalized the kind of thing Bernie was talking about, which had to do much more with people. Why? Because he's much more receptive to Manchin than he is progressives. Progressives are window dressing of a rotten Democratic Party that's characterized by corporate greed and military adventurism abroad. That's what they stand for. And they use progressives every 4 years to try to bring in folk, and people are tired of it. I was brought in myself in the past a number of times. I supported Nader, I supported Jill Stein, I supported Biden, I supported Obama. Why? Because I figured that was the best and the left couldn't do it. Well, I got to be self-critical too, because we're all making our choices relative to circumstances and context, right? But if all we get is a two-party system, democracy will run out of gas. The two-party system is a major impediment for democracy. People tell me we got to save democracy, save democracy. Yes, but do you think you save democracy by putting out these milquetoast politicians with neoliberal policies as the only opposition to this escalating fascism? The fascism will sooner or later take over, because if it's only Tweedledum and Tweedledum and freaking frack, then it will continually go back and forth, Republicans and Democrats, and they'll say, oh, Sister Sabby, Brother West, we understand what you're talking about. There's some deep truths in what you're saying, but now is not the right time. Then when is the right time? 5 years from now? 10, 15, 20, 25, 30? They told Frederick Douglass the same thing in the 1850s. You got to choose between two slaveholders, Henry Clay, James Polk. Well, one got a liberal version of slavery, other got a conservative version of slavery. What you gonna do, Fred? Third party, Liberty Party. The slow makings of what would become the Republican Party. Republican Party began as what? Third party.
Yep.
That's Lincoln. And Lincoln took tremendous pressure and Harriet Tubman and William Lloyd Garrison and Lydia Maria Child. I mean, they had to put Lydia Maria Child's legacy. All of those abolitionists putting pressure on Lincoln. But it's that pressure in the name of precious everyday people in the language of the great Sly Stone. That's the key. And we got to bear witness to that in our own distinctive ways. You know what I mean?
Dr. West, have you ever seen, like, I want to transition a little bit here into poverty since we started off with economics. Have you ever seen, there was a show that came on back in the day, but I used to watch it on like TV Land. Like as I got older, it was called Good Times. You familiar with the show Good Times?
Oh, you mean with Jimmy Walker?
Yep.
Yeah. I love the mother. I love the mother in that show, though. One of the few shows that Hollywood produced that had to do with everyday black people. And I give that credit to Brother Norman Lear. That was Norman Lear who played that crucial role.
Right. And what's important, what people may not understand is, so Good Times was about a black family. They lived in South Side Chicago. They lived in the projects. The actor John Amos, who played the father on the sitcom, he left the show. And the way they had him leave the show was James died. Right. So that's a typical storyline. John Amos years later explained that one of the reasons why he left the show was because he felt like the family never got a leg up. Every time something good happened, they got another setback by something bad. He was like, they never got out of poverty. They never got out of the projects. But to the producer's credit, that is the reality for most people. Most people don't get out of poverty in this country. And so I understand where he was coming from as an actor, but there is this constant cycle of poverty that happens in this country. And I'm curious, like, how would you tackle that? So, for example, the $90 million that's being used to build Cop City, how do you feel that money could be used in other places if we're talking about poverty?
Well, see, because I believe that poverty is a crime against humanity, and I'm anti-crime, which means then that be guaranteed income, be it a whole creative sets of policies that will ensure that people can never go below a certain level. And this is not new. I just got back from Sweden with my precious mother-in-law. And Sweden and others had this under Olof Palme way back in the 70s and 80s. Now they only got 10 million people. In New York got almost 10. So they got the same population in New York City. So people say, oh, it's different in scope. That's true. That's true. But no, it's the commitment. It's the commitment, you see. And think of it this way, that the U.S. Army and the U.S. military, they actually have a form of socialism. They take care of those folk. What is the poverty rate at West Point? What is the poverty rate in U.S. bases? We got 800 military bases around the world in over 100 countries. What is the poverty rate on all of those military units? Zero.
Yep.
Zero. What's the poverty rate of U.S. Congress? Zero. Guaranteed income. Now, we got to use that model for everyday people. Why? Because, you know, the present status quo says our military have the highest priority. I said, ooh. What happens when the people have the highest priority over the profits and so forth? What happens when you have warped priorities that get reshaped? Now that's called revolution. People say, oh, Brother West, this is revolution. Yes, it is revolution. What is revolution? The sharing of power. People wouldn't choose to be poor if they had other choices. It's the sharing of resources. They wouldn't choose to be thoroughly broke. I'm sorry, but I got my thing just broke on me here. But be thoroughly broke. They wouldn't choose to live lives that are beneath dignity, even though they have an inherent dignity that no circumstance could ever wipe out. So that, yes, it is revolution. It's a massive transfer of power, resources, and dignity to poor and working people. That's revolution. Said. That's why I am a revolutionary Christian. Now, the Christian is the noun and revolutionary is the adjective. We won't go into all that right now, but I just believe that in the end, my dear sister, any justice that's only justice soon degenerates into something less than justice. If the love is not in it, if the genuine care and concern is not in it, the careerists will take over. The opportunists will take over. The mercenaries will take over. And they'll use justice language, but they won't have the deep love in their heart, the concern about empowering poor people. You see, so that love supreme that Coltrane talked about, see, that is inseparable from justice. They're not identical, but they're inseparable. And that's what we learned from the history of Black people. Because there'd been no other people in 400 years being so hated, teach the world so much about love.
One of the
Teach the
questions
growth
I
from
have.
that's why I'm going to Mississippi. Emmett Till's mama. Miss Till, what did she say? I don't have a minute to hate. I'll pursue justice for the rest of my life. Miss Till, where do you get that power from? I got it from a spiritual achievement of the best of a people that loved in the face of hatred and wanted freedom for everybody in the face of terror and wanted healing for everybody in the face of trauma and wanted joy for everybody in the face of sorrow. That's Louis Armstrong. That's Mahalia Jackson. That's Phyllis Hyman. That's Donny Hathaway. That's Curtis Mayfield. That's the Dramatics and the Delphonics and the Whispers and Enchantment and the Jones Girls and the Emotions. They just not artists who entertain. They are love warriors who are spreading healing of a deeply wounded people, so that the best of our music has a spill over into the best of our politics. Look at our politicians compared to our musicians. The politicians had 15% of the courage of our great musicians. We'd have different kind of leadership.
Yeah. Well, one of the questions in reference to leadership, we were just talking about the situation in Hawaii. And one of the things that we're pointing out is that Joe Biden still to this day has not visited East Palestine, Ohio. And he was just recently in Hawaii, and it was not a good look for him. He got there kind of late too. So a lot of the residents in Maui are very upset, and they feel like they've been forgotten about. Meanwhile, there's billions of dollars going to Ukraine. The Biden administration is offering people in Maui $700 per household. So people are very upset. If you were president, how would you have handled those two situations? The situation in East Palestine, Ohio, with the chemicals that are spread through the community and the people are getting sick, and the wildfires in Hawaii?
Well, you know, I was just blessed to be there with my dear wife, Anahita. We had a wonderful lecture tour with native Hawaiians. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing this past December. And just be able to look in their eyes and give them a hug and be empowered by their struggle means that, again, they must have a high priority. The same kind of priority that not just Ukraine, but Egypt, Israel, and other major recipients of U.S. taxpayer money. So it's very clear. You can always see what kind of value that people put on lives in terms of how many resources they make available to people. You see. And same was true in Africa. Same was true in various parts of Latin America and so on. Now, the fact that Hawaii actually is part of the United States, of course, the history of colonization is one that we could always aware of, you know, Hawaii and Cuba and Puerto Rico and Guam becoming part of the the transcontinental imperial America after the 13 colonies became 48 states. That is still very clear that a Hawaiian life, especially a native Hawaiian life, doesn't have the same value as a white life. See, that's what white supremacy is in the most concrete form. And we have to be honest about that. Now, it's not static and stationary. People can change. You put pressure on people, they can change. There's no doubt about that. Biden himself has come a long way since the 1960s and 70s, was hanging out with Strom Thurmond and John Stetis and Jesse Helms and so forth and so on. I don't mind having friends of different politics and so on, but you also tell them the truth. I disagree with you here. This kind of white supremacy, this kind of homophobia, this kind of transphobia. We can still be human beings and connect, but I'm not putting up with it. I'm not putting up with it. But no, when you got bills together and creating crimes against humanity called the mass incarceration regime, or eliminating welfare, allowing credit card companies to gain access to huge amounts of profits and are fail-safe such that they don't have to undergo bankruptcy. I mean, all these different policies that have come through Biden's own career that have been crushing poor and working people. And it's fascinating to me to see so many of both the progressives as well as black politicians acting as if he's Martin Luther King Jr.'s second cousin on the vanilla side of town or something. Say, no, tell the truth about it. Tell the truth about him. What war he ever opposed? What military budget has he ever fought against? None whatsoever. Meaning what? Meaning that still, is he better than Trump? Well, of course he is on a whole host of issues. Our precious gay brothers and lesbian sisters and trans and reproductive rights. Yes, of course, we're not naive about this. But he could push us into World War III just like Trump can push us to the second Civil War. So that's our choice between the second Civil War and World War III. We've got to find another way. This two-party system is crushing us. We've got to find alternatives. We have to have alternative voices. And most importantly, those voices must be voices that go beyond the hatred and revenge and ugliness of our gangsterized politics. So that integrity, honesty, decency, love, not perfection. We're always going to have faults and foibles. We're always going to fall on our faces and try again, and fail better, as the great Samuel Beckett put it. But at least you have some moments of statespersonship. And that's what's missing. That's why almost one half of our fellow citizens want nothing to do with politics. It's just nothing but just war by other means. The gangsters are running things, and it has no possibility of redemption.
But what would you, so two things, but specifically, like, how would you handle those particular situations differently? East Palestine, Ohio, Biden has not visited, and Hawaii, people feel like he showed up there late and he's not giving them enough money, obviously, compared to what's being given to Ukraine.
Oh, no, that's what I said. It would be a matter of presence, resources, and follow through. Presence,
Okay.
resources, and follow through. And by follow through, what I mean is putting in place policies that would ensure that people would be equipped to deal with subsequent problems that would flow from what they're dealing with now. Because, of course, the backdrop of Hawaii is very much the backdrop of imperial policies and corporate greed. The transformation of the land into plantations tied to production of goods, be it bananas or whatever it is, that characterize so much of the history of the worst of Hawaii. Now, the history of the best of Hawaii has been community building, has been resistance to the corporate greed, and so on. So you also have to engage in truth telling. I mean, unfortunately, politics is like war. Truth is the first casualty. Injustice is usually the second. So you have to have leaders who would just tell the people the truth. I understand why you find yourself in this situation. These imperial policies, this corporate greed has pushed it in a certain direction. Same is true with the fossil fuel companies, vis-a-vis ecological catastrophe. You got to tell the story of why we're getting all of these fires. And I'm in Los Angeles, right? We got hurricane and earthquake same day.
So one thing I would recommend, this just a suggestion that I would recommend is, I personally would not say, like, if it were me, I would not say that Biden is better than Trump. I think they're pretty much the same. I think
on particular issues.
Well, I think that one is covert and one is overt. I think that Trump was more overt about his beliefs and his ideas, and I felt like Biden is more covert about it. For example, Biden said a lot of good things about what he planned to do for the climate and green energy, but at the same time, Joe Biden approved the Willow Project and drilling off of the coast of Texas as well. So he's more covert about it, right? Whereas Trump is a little bit more vocal and says, no, I'm not dealing with this climate thing. We're bringing back plastic straws. But they're both doing the same thing. So I think that's just something that.
But there, though, I think, and you tell me what you think. There, I would say that in regard to those issues, you are absolutely right. Same is true with the militarism and corporate greed. But when it comes to the plight of our precious trans and gay brothers and lesbian sisters, and also reproductive rights, there is a difference between the hypocritical Democratic Party and the much, much more conservative right-wing Republican Party. Now, that doesn't mean that in a larger framework, what you're saying, lo and behold, there's certain covert and certain overt in regard to other issues. But you would grant me that in terms of just the plight of we could call them sexual minorities or those folk who have been so viciously treated over time and space in regard to their sexual orientation, that Biden is better than Trump on those issues.
But even to that issue, when we look at covert, Joe Biden behind closed doors is endorsing Democrat candidates, or has endorsed Democrat candidates that are anti-choice, that are anti-LGBTQ, and he endorses them because they're status quo Democrats, instead of endorsing their opponent that identifies as progressive.
I see what you're saying.
That supports those issues. So like Jessica Cisneros, perfect example. She was running as a progressive against Henry Cuellar. Henry Cuellar is, anti-choice, and all of them just got in line. Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, what's that guy's name? Clyburn, sorry, Joe Clyburn. They all got in line and said, we're going to endorse Henry Cuellar because he's the status quo and he's the corporate Democrat. So if they really care about those issues, they would not be supporting those candidates that are against those issues. And that's what I mean about the covert, the sneakiness behind it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see. Well, I'm going to have to think, ponder, and pray on that. That's a powerful, powerful formulation you got there, though. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I have a couple more for you, Dr. West. One of the questions that comes up, I have to be careful how I talk about this on YouTube because they coming after us with the medical information. So I'm just going to describe it as pandemic. If you were president and we had another pandemic, how would you handle that? Would you do similarities in reference to lockdowns or mandates, or would you take a different path, and why?
Well, one is that I would tell my fellow citizens the truth about how public policy has been disproportionately shaped by the greed of the pharmaceutical industry, and that there has to be a severing of that profit-making obsession of that industry with the policies that affect our precious citizens. Now, of course, that's a larger issue because I would already have the pharmaceutical industry so, if not nationalized, under Democratic control, that it would be a different setting in that regard. But then I would have a robust conversation among the scientists so that one particular scientific perspective would not become so predominant that it would marginalize other scientific voices in terms of how one proceeds, vis-a-vis mandates, vis-a-vis vaccines, or what have you. And so there has to be a much broader critical reflection and conversation about the kinds of policies that would flow therefrom. Now, I wouldn't dictate the policies myself because I would want to learn from the scientists. I've got to have a humility and a modesty in terms of learning from them. But the problem was, in the past, it seems to me, is that it was just too easy for the pharmaceutical industry to throw its weight around in terms of profit-making orientation to shape the public policy of the government. And that's what needs to be called into question. And even there, I mean, I know RFK Jr. and others, and I love my dear brother. I think on Israel, we really gonna go at it like Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali. And he's still crazy about capitalism, but free market capitalism, not monopoly capitalism. So I understand, my dear brother. But his preoccupation with this issue, I think he makes some very excessive and extravagant claims. But I think it's very important that voices be heard that are too often marginalized, so that we have a larger, high quality conversation rather than a conversation in which the streamlining of pharmaceutical industry's interest too often is disproportionate in shaping the dialogue. So that's how I would respond to that.
So multiple voices, yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, because what we found is that those other voices were censored, whether it was YouTube or Twitter, or, Dr. Malone had his entire account removed from Twitter. So we didn't really get to hear from those other people unless we heard them on Joe Rogan. And then those episodes were removed from Joe Rogan. So hearing from multiple people, I think, is a good thing. And you brought up RFK Jr., and that brings me to the other poll. So I did ask people, if RFK Jr. lost the primary, should Cornel West and RFK Jr. run together as Greens? And I was really surprised by this poll, because This was over 1,300 votes. 48% said yes, 34% said no, and 18% said not sure. And I prefaced this by saying if RFK Jr. were to change his position on Israel and Palestine, because I know that is where you two fundamentally disagree. He supports reparations, but he doesn't support the cash payments. I feel like you could change his mind in reference to that too, because he does understand the importance of reparations. But I wanted to show you this, and I wanted to get your opinion about that. What do you think about that? If RFK Jr. lost the primary, and let's say, he came around on the Israel and Palestine issue and changed his position a little bit on the reparations issue, could you see the two of you actually running together?
Well, I've never seen this poll before. I can tell you that, definitely. And it's true, the time that we spent together when he was focused on environmental racism and so on, and his precious sister Carrie and the whole family, that we had wonderful time and what have you. But it's just so premature on one hand. And the other hand, I don't know, a ticket West Kennedy. That kind of ebony ivory would be both interesting, but it just never occurred to me. You know what I mean? It just never occurred to me. It really, and of course it depends on which one's president, which one's vice president. So I was just talking to my dear sister Nina Turner, who I love so deeply, and good God Almighty, just the idea of her being vice presidential material is high cotton in so many ways. But I know she's in a situation now where it's impossible. But I haven't thought about vice president. Now, of course, if he said, well, I would be the vice president, he'd be the president. I said, well, wait. Mick Jagger can't be with James Brown. I thought Mick Jagger got to be VP to James Brown. How we going to work this out, my brother? Let's go have a drink. Let's go have a drink. But no, he's always my brother, even though a lot of people think that he's out there in a lot of different ways. I think he's got a decent heart. He's got a lot of goldenness in him. But I've never seen that poll. And as you know, we just speculate and pontificate and kind of brainstorming in a loving and humorous way. But most importantly, for me, whatever is best for me to serve poor and working people. That's the only reason why I'm running, because this is the last thing I need to be doing at this age of my life.
So that's another question that came my way multiple times this week. Some people were thinking that maybe Nina Turner may run with you because she announced on Twitter that she has an announcement.
Well, she would be magnificent. No, I think that she, because I talked with my dear sister. She's so wise. She's so visionary. And she's like a sister to Anahita, my wife, And so when it comes to just spirits and souls who come together, not just as politicians, but as human beings, that, Nina Turner to me is in that particular category. She really is. But of course, we became comrades because of Brother Bernie, because I had met her before that, both campaigns. But I'm sure there's a number of other visionary folk out there. It's really hard to say. And I've got a long way. First, I've got to get the nomination with my Green brothers and sisters. That's the first thing
I'm thinking far ahead.
I know that's far down the road. I got to get that nomination in August, and I do not take that for granted. But I can tell you one thing, though, that this 5% we have now, I haven't had a public rally. I haven't had a fundraiser. I've just had maybe 150 interviews and podcasts. So I haven't come fully out of the blocks yet. And I've got a number of different stages that I'm going through in this campaign. But the important thing is we're going to be true to the love and courage and integrity that those who came before have poured into us. And if I ever reach the point that when I appear, folk can't see a little Martin King and Fannie Lou Hamer and Coltrane and Rabbi Heschel and Edward Zaid inside of me, there's time for me to go. It's time for me to go. There's too much West and not enough of the great tradition of the great folk who came before. That's the key. It's like Dizzy Gillespie blowing his horn. If you can't hear Louis and Roy Eldridge, all you hear is Dizzy. Something is wrong. That's my tradition.
I hear you. I have two quick questions in reference to criminal justice.
Yes.
Tara Reid is basically stuck in Russia right now. She cannot come back to the United States. She's told if she does return that she would probably be arrested. She's one of them. And the other one is these clients of Jeffrey Epstein, so to speak, this book that has not released the names in the book. And every now and then we get another article that we see that is mentioning a couple of people that had dinner with him, right? If you were president, number one, would you allow for Tara Reid to return back to the US and not be arrested and return back to her life in California with her horse and her daughter? And two, in reference to the names with Jeffrey Epstein, would you call for those names to be released?
Well, it would be a question of whether one actually has the presidential power and authority to release those names. Who has authority over those right now? Do you know? I don't know that case well enough.
I would think that the DOJ may have some stake in this somewhere. So you would probably have to pressure the DOJ to pressure the federal. Yeah.
Yeah. See, I would want the DOJ to have some crucial autonomy, so I wouldn't try to excessively weaponize it the way too many presidents in the past and present have done. But I would say this, though, in terms of incarceration, that my priorities would be the Mumia Abu-Jamals and the H. Rap Browns and the Leonard Peltiers and the Snowdens and certainly Julian Assange. Now, I would want to know more about my dear sister who you talked about. But in terms of ensuring that there is a fairness of people who are in places they should not be, same would be true for Asada Shakur. Welcome her from Cuba. That would be my priority. So I would have to look at that case. I think it would be difficult for me to make a decision now. But I know that if I get into the people's house, that the people who have sacrificed so much, who I believe, I'm convinced that they're innocent, who were freedom fighters, who were incarcerated, not just to incarcerate them, but to scare people like me and you so that we become accommodating to the status quo because we don't want to be incarcerated or assassinated. So that these things happen to send signs to other folk, to keep them with a complicity and a cowardliness to adjust to the status quo. No, to know that lo and behold, there's possibilities of justice for them. And I would certainly use presidential power for those kinds of pardons. But that would be true for a whole host of cases I know not of at the moment. And I would have to look at each case individually, as you can imagine. Very much so. But the criminal justice system would have to go such fundamental transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. But you see, with the abolition of poverty and quality education and quality jobs, you already are speaking to crucial background conditions that produce too much behavior that violates other people's dignity, you see.
Awesome. Dr. West, two things, or one thing I would add here. On your website, under policies, you have dismantling the empire, where you talk about, military spending, NATO, etc., and then unleashing democracy. You mentioned Medicare for all, decriminalization of drugs, housing for all, quality education, free college tuition, jobs and living wages for all. You mentioned reparations, secure the rights for LGBTQ and trans people, etc., and also saving the planet, where you go into the fossil fuel companies. One thing that I would recommend, and again, it's your campaign, but just one thing I would recommend at the very top, corruption. Number one, weeding out the corruption, that includes big pharmacy, that puts it all together. That includes big pharma, that includes the militarization of the police, that includes corporate money in politics, calling out these billionaires, and not just the Jeff Bezos, which is more the obvious one, but calling out people like Larry Fink, who owns BlackRock, These people, a lot of these people, they like to sit in the background, just like the Sackler family. I was just watching that documentary, Dope Sick, about the opioid crisis in this country. The
Yeah.
Sackler family should be under the jail. And these kind of people that have that type of wealth, that they're kind of silent, you may see their name in museums, or they may have buildings that are dedicated to them, but you rarely see those face. Those people are the ones that really, really need to be called out. And I think it's easy to call out Jeff Bezos. Everybody knows who he is. It's easy to call out Elon Musk. They know him. For a long time, people did not see the faces of the Sackler family. And Larry Fink don't show his face that much either. So I think corruption would be a good thing to add there as well. Just an idea.
No, I appreciate that. And I tell you, you don't realize how much I learned from your insights in watching your show. And the fact that you have the courage with such style and power to raise your vision and analysis. And so I appreciate that. And I hear exactly what you're saying. But I think you also agree, though, that the corruption has to go hand in hand with fundamental transformation, because we don't want a capitalist society that has just less corruption, but it's still capitalist to the degree to which it's exploitative, so tied to profit that people are always secondary to profit, and basic social needs are secondary to money making. You see what I mean? So that the corruption and the transformation would have to go hand in hand. I know you acknowledge that, but I just want to say that for the audience as well. I hear, and part of that has to do with democratic accountability. You have to be accountable to the people's public flourishing, public welfare, public well-being, you know? And we've lost so much of that in this society. Things public are trashed. It's all privatistic. Other than the army. Other than the military, that's still socialist.
That's right. And one more thing, Dr. West. We do call in sometimes. We do like call in like once a week. Some people have asked, like, would you be interested in coming on to call in? It's an app, but you can do it on the computer with me and letting some of the viewers ask you questions about your campaign.
Love it. I would. In fact, we can have one and nothing but just call in if you like. That'd be beautiful.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
That would be beautiful. But it's always it's a blessing and a joy to be in conversation with you, because in all honesty, you know, times are really so grim. They are so dim. You know, the gangsters and thugs are more and more taking over, and they're getting normalized and naturalized. People think this is the only way to be in the world, and that's part of the challenge of a third party. You see. The idea of the two-party system has become so naturalized and normalized that we're told there is no alternative ever. Just get used to it. So that the poor and Jamal and Babe Bruh and Ray and all them, they got to get used to just being in the hood forever.
Yep.
And I say, never over my dead body will I ever accept a system where they have to get used to the levels of social misery every day, and people walking around sipping tea as if their plight has no weight in gravitas in the larger collective good. Can't put up with that. No. That's like asking Sam Cooke to sound like Pat Boone. It ain't gonna happen. Ever.
All right. Well, Dr. West, thank you so much for joining me again. And where can people follow your campaign? Eric, make sure you put the link to the website in the chat too, if you can.
Well, it would be Cornel West office at gmail.com. That would probably be the main one. What would it be, babe? DR.
Cornel West.
Yeah, my wife is. You ought to come say hello. It's a DR Cornel West office at gmail.com. That's what it is.
That's Sabby?
Yeah, that's Sister Sabby. Yeah. Anahita says hello to you.
Hi. Hi. Ooh, how are you?
There she is.
Good. How are you?
Good. We love your show. We watch you all the time.
Oh, thank you so much.
Indeed, we just had our anniversary yesterday. Listen to a little Tony and the Glenn Jones version too.
Oh, happy late anniversary.
Yeah,
Thank
it was
you.
nice. It was nice.
All right.
All right, salute you now.
Good seeing you.
Salute you.
Bye-bye.
Indeed, and God bless your loved ones, your family, your precious family.
Thank you so much. You too, Dr. West.
Definitely. Take good care now.
Bye. All right, guys. We do have one more story I do want to cover, which also has to deal with electoral politics 2024 election. But I want to go ahead and get to some of these comments first. I want to keep you guys waiting here. Thank you so much for the super sticker, Fat Man TV. Thank you, Jody. What Dwayne V said, Jim Crow Joe needs to go. Thank you, Rodrigo. Dr. West, go to Maui to talk to people as a green candidate. That's a good idea, Rodrigo. He's in Jackson right now. Thank you, Roger. Sab double streaming you and Larry as he's screening entire movie. He's loving it because both believe in local community control and militias. Larry says hi. Hi, Larry. Shout out to Natalie says, please ask Dr. West to check into the whole C-19 issue. Dr. John Campbell would be a great place for him to start. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Dr. West, where is reparations on your website? It is here. I thought I showed that already. Hold on, let me see. Boop. Michael, if you go to the website under policies, look under Unleashing Democracy. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Laugh. I'm making sure I'm not skipping anybody here. Thank you, Laugh. Dr. West is concerned with supporting the poor. That is why we need to support him, period. Thank you, Laugh. Thank you, Matt. Thank you for your hard work, Sabby. Dr. West, please come to San Diego to spread your words of wisdom. We need your campaign out here. Thank you, Lori. Dr. West rally at the new school with Dr. Wolf. That would be based, huh? That'd be pretty cool. Thank you, Perry. How should we react to the murder of Maui? I don't know. Thank you, Laugh66. Dr. West has biblical tradition that says you are not obliged to pay to all of your 5 wives. Has to be said. I don't know about that. Thank you, Justin B. Dr. West is the best threat. Hashtag go West. Thank you, Web Angel. Congrats on 50K subs. I predict, congrats on 50K subs, Sabs. Sorry. I predict you'll pass BJG as she becomes more and more irrelevant sitting on that fence. Ain't nobody got time for that. Oh, dear. Oh, man. Oh, geez, Web Angel. It's not a competition for me. Thank you, Felonious. I love the jazz spirit of Dr. West. I also wish Brother Cornel would recognize the precarious situation of Iran and not foment unrest, but give it overdue respect. Thank you. And thank you for this as well, Felonious. Covert Biden versus overt Trump. Brilliant. Yeah, that's kind of how I see them. I see Biden as covert and I see Trump as overt. Thank you, Joe B. Dr. West, no need to defend Biden/Dems in any way. And thank you, Caleb, for the super sticker. And thank you, Gavin, anarchist for Cornel West 24. Thank you, guys. Thank you all so much. We have one more story for you, actually, which also involves the 2024 election. If you have not seen this, there are 2 Gen Z dudes, right? Harry, I forget his friend's name, but we're going to show it. But Harry is, I think, the one that tends to be more popular, right? So he constantly pushes Joe Biden for 2024, also on TikTok. And I guess the idea for the Democratic Party was to get Gen Z social media peeps to heavily promote Joe Biden so that Gen Zers will feel inspired to come out and support and endorse Joe Biden, right? Okay, we'll get into the whole situation that they have with the Deans. We'll get into that with the Democratic Party in a second. But recently, Harry actually decided to come after Brianna Joy Gray, who was defending Dr. West. So let's actually start there. I'll make this bigger. So this is Harry Sisson. If you guys are on Twitter, you've probably seen this account. This account just heavily pushes Joe Biden. Okay. There's a reason for all this. Harry said, people like Brianna are the worst of the left. They think voting green does anything positive. Trump, a proven sexual abuser and a 4-time indicted fraud, will likely be on the ballot, and you decide to act all high and mighty. Give me a break. Just put your red hat on already. So there's a couple of things I want to point out with his response before we get to what Brie said. Trump, a proven sexual abuser. Has that actually been proven? But to that, I respond with, Joe Biden has also been accused of sexual assault. Not just Donald Trump, but this account, this Harry account, is not going to say anything bad about Joe Biden because, again, Harry is paid to promote Joe Biden. And I'm going to show you the receipts to show that he's paid. So think about it. 4 times indicted on fraud. Okay, so Harry is going to overlook the situation that Joe Biden has in reference to Hunter Biden's Ukraine business deals. See, this is why I can do tit for tat. Like, we can do this both ways. But Harry doesn't want to point those things out. One of the things that I had a problem with is when he said, give me a break, just put on your red hat. But this part, you decide to act all high and mighty. Again, Gen Z, obviously Brie has way more experience when it comes to the political arena than he does. But do you see how they disrespect? This is a perfect example I wanted to point out to you guys. This is how, once again, white liberals will disrespect Black people, whether they're Dems, whether they're progressives, whatever, even if they have more education, which Brie does, and more experience, which Brie does. You see how they talk to us? High and mighty. You see this? Okay, now let me show you what she said. Knowing the DNC is paying know-nothing zennials to act like Dr. West has bigger tax problems than the Biden family is just one reason I look forward to voting green next year. This all started with this tweet here from Harry. Let me scroll up so you can see what she said. Brie said, if your goal is breaking the corporate duopoly, then voting for Dr. Cornel West is the most strategic choice, which is 100% true. Now, she was responding to George Takei. George Takei is the, look, I love Star Trek. Brie likes Star Trek. George Takei was a Star Trek cast member. But George Takei has got to be the most shit liberals that I have ever seen in my life. I still remember months ago when George Takei said the American people can afford to struggle so that Ukrainians can get this money. George Takei, again, he's rich. He's rich. So she was responding to what he said. And what George Takei said was, I remember the 2000 election. There were enough votes for Ralph Nader to hand the election to George W. Bush. I'm not even going to get into that because YouTube is funny about talking about that particular election. I remember the 2016 election. There were enough votes for Jill Stein to hand the election to Donald Trump. You see how you see the shit libbiest liberal. In 2024, the Green Party is running Cornel West. Let's not repeat this history, friends. Your vote is not a marriage. You're not choosing a life partner. It's a chess move for what is best for the country and around the world. George is rich. And again, this goes back to that theory that those of us who vote third party, if those candidates did not exist, we would have voted for the Democrat candidate. And that's not true. I don't know how many times I have to continue to say that. People like George Takei continue to tell that lie. So Brie responded to that saying that Dr. West is the best choice if you're trying to break the duopoly, and that makes sense. Here comes Harry. So Harry comes in and says, how much does Cornel West owe in unpaid child support? So you see this? You see that? Okay. So I said this. I said owing and paying are two different things. Just because you have a balance doesn't mean you haven't been paying towards it. Dr. West has already addressed this. If it were Biden, you would be defending him. And this is 100% true. This is what this account is there to do. You don't come out of nowhere and all of a sudden you got hundreds and thousands of followers on Twitter unless the Democratic Party paid you. This also reminds me of, you guys remember Brooklyn Dad? That Brooklyn Dad account, same thing. This guy came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, he got hundreds and thousands of followers on Twitter. Nobody knew who he was. That doesn't happen unless you're already known. And then you go to watch Brooklyn Dad's YouTube channel, and I'm like, there's nobody. I'm like, dude, how is it? There's no way. Then it was outed that the Democratic Party was paying him. You got to be suspect of these people on here all the time. Their whole account is just Biden great, Biden great, Biden great. That's it. You got to be suspect of those people, right? So did I say something else here? I thought I said something else. I don't remember what else was said. This person, my name is John, said, what could possibly prompt you to ask that? And he goes, the fact that he owes child support and tax dollars. So again, I want you to pay attention to what this little guy is doing here. Okay. Now, he told Brie that she was high and mighty. So he told a black woman she was high and mighty. Then here he comes to Cornel West saying, owes child support and tax dollars. Let me go back. Let's go back to that other post. This really just irked me. Is the worst of the doing green does anything positive. And then here he comes here again. Also, she never answered my question. Brie Joy, how much does Cornel West owe in child support and unpaid taxes? You see what's happening here? And I responded here and I said, Biden is also accused of sexual assault. Biden approved the Willow Project, but don't you care about climate change? That's how I know you're paid by the DNC. You overlook obvious cues. And that's a big one. That's a really big one, right? Like, always talking about climate change, always talking about we got to do this, we got to do that, but you're going to just overlook that Joe Biden approved the Willow Project, that he's approved drilling off the coast of Texas as well. That account, and I'm going to show you something. Watch. Yeah, you tell when people are paid. Watch this. Go to this account. Now, he's Gen Z. He got Joe Biden here in the head, the whatever this is called, the banner, in the banner. Okay. Look at this. 20 Democrat, 700,000 on TikTok. By the way, I'm telling you guys, this shit came out of nowhere. Then says Harry at palettemanagement.com to email, right? Okay. He probably shouldn't have put that there. And I'll show you in a second. But look, it's just, I'm a Gen Z voter and I'd happily vote for Biden again in 2024. You know, it's just obvious things. This is so obvious. It took Donald Trump 15 days to visit Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria, which killed thousands. So why are Republicans going after Biden but not Trump? They're totally hypocrites. Republicans never hold the same standards. The problem is it's also Democrats going after Joe Biden in reference to Maui as well. You mean to tell me all the people in Hawaii are Republicans? It's a blue state. So, and then look at the timing. 49 minutes ago. Let's go down. Watch. 1 hour ago, Biden. See, watch. Let's just keep going down. This is all you'll see. Biden. See, Cornel West, the Green Party candidate, owes $500,000 unpaid taxes and child support. This is the guy that the people on the far left are saying should take votes from Biden seriously. See, Biden. He's not a serious candidate. Biden 2024. Like, who What Gen Zer, and my students were Gen Z. So this is how, like, you can't fool me with this man, right? All right. Now, why would he go after Brie? Let me show you why. Let me take you back a little bit. Let's remember what happened after Bernie dropped out. Watch this.
This race is bigger than a presidential campaign even. It's about a movement, and a movement that's not going anywhere.
If you've paid attention to the 2020 presidential race, you've likely seen Brianna Joy Gray doing battle on behalf of Senator Bernie Sanders.
Some people, I think, are going to be really pleased about the fact that Bernie Sanders unsettled their expectations about what you had to do to get ahead in politics.
Gray was Sanders' pugnacious press secretary, often found on television gleefully defending so-called Bernie bros and arguing that the Democratic Party was out of step with its own voters.
Bernie Sanders is #1 with black voters as well.
You had to show me the receipts on that.
I'll show it to you right now.
When Sanders quit the race in April, he quickly endorsed Joe Biden.
I congratulate Joe Biden, a very decent man who I will work with.
His press secretary steadfastly refused, drawing a sharp rebuke from Sanders.
Who I will work with.
His press secretary steadfastly refused.
Right here. See, this is the moment. With the utmost respect for Bernie Sanders, who is an incredible human being and genuine inspiration, I don't endorse Joe Biden. Everybody remember that moment? And see, once again, Brie has said to people on Twitter this year, you don't have to vote for Joe Biden. So, of course, a lot of people attacked her because of that. And they're like, uh-oh, here we go with this again. That's why he's coming after her. And I'm pretty sure he was told to go after her. This is just a reminder, okay? And I want to remind you what Bernie Sanders said. Let's not forget this.
Drawing a sharp rebuke from Sanders. Gray argues that progressives shouldn't transfer allegiances without a raft of progressive concessions. I spoke with Gray as the convention kicked off about why she isn't lining up behind anyone but Trump Democrats.
There are a lot of people out there that are progressives, this new wave of progressivism that say, how can I support these two people?
Donald Trump does present an unprecedented threat to the republic, to innumerable, incredibly vulnerable, discrete populations that live in this country. And if he were to get 4 more years in office, there would be a level of digging that would have to be done to get us out of the mess that he could continue to create that would take generations. At the same time, I think there's not enough attention paid to what the long-term effects of lesser of two evilism really are. So every single year, we're told that this is the most important election of our lifetime. And it's not untrue. It's not untrue.
Years,
but
yeah.
The question is, why is that the case? Why is it that every single year the Republicans seem to ratchet it to the right? Democrats feel compelled to follow them to the middle. We've lost all semblance of any true left party in this country that is genuinely looking out for the interests of poor working class people and in particular labor. Why is that? And what is the backstop against us continuing this rightward slide until the rest of all time? Really, I don't know how to make this point strongly enough. Bernie supporters aren't rooting for Biden to lose. They're rooting for Biden to be the kind of candidate who we believe and have empirical evidence to back up would be more electable and a more ethical, humane president.
Together, we must build a nation that is more equitable, more compassionate, and more inclusive. I know that Joe Biden will begin that fight on day one.
Didn't happen, right? So that did not happen. That being said, let's remember after Brie, was very vocal about not supporting Joe Biden. Remember when Bernie Sanders was questioned about how she felt about that, Bernie's response was, she was my former press secretary, right? I think we all remember that. So they're coming after Brianna Joy Gray because there's this push that once again, they have been told by this management company that they work for, which I'm gonna show you receipts for that got to go after her because remember what happened last time? She told people she wasn't voting for Joe Biden and she's from that Bernie group. And I also thought it was very strange to hear a Gen Z kid say, oh, from that far left people, those far lefties, you do realize that the moderates and the centrists do not feel the same way about protecting your future in reference to climate change the way that people on the far left do. And that's why I said, this guy is a plant. He is paid. There's no way these kids don't talk like this. I advise those kids. Now I want to show you a contrast. I want to remind you, even back then, even Crystal Ball told you it would be a bad idea to cave to Biden. Listen to this again. I just want to remind you. So I want to show you why they're not going after Crystal. So listen to what she said in reference to supporting Joe Biden. She disagreed with it too. But why aren't they going after her? I'm going to tell you. Listen to this.
Signing on for an affirmative Joe Biden vote means actively supporting a politician and political movement that's most deeply held conviction is kicking you in the face. Signing on for the continuation of an abusive relationship. And most importantly, signing on for a status quo that has brought millions of Americans economic, emotional, and physical ruin. And their whole strategy rests on the assumption that in spite of your protestations and gnashing of teeth on Twitter, you will in fact fall in line. Sure, progressive groups issued a list of demands, but Biden's not going to take any of those seriously because no one's making him take them seriously. These groups have already pledged to vote for him and organize the youth vote. Why? Because as Mehdi says, what other choice do you have? But in fact, there is another choice. It's the choice that centrists wield very effectively, like a battle axe, all the time. Centrists and their corporate allies are constantly coddled and constantly pandered to and have won all the power in America because they are willing to withhold their votes. Maybe we'll be with you, maybe we won't. And the reality confronting leftists right now is that while it may be ugly and you will 100% be hated, I can promise you that, there is no path to actual power that doesn't involve being willing to wield the power that you have. There will be no concessions granted out of kindness. And if the GOP's central driving force right now is owning the libs, the Dems' central driving force right now is to own the left. Don't let Obama's nice words or Bernie's castigating fool you.
So why wouldn't they go after someone like Crystal? Because in the end, Crystal supported Biden. And when Biden was elected, Crystal gave Biden credit. So she's not going to be a target. But for those who were still very prominent and in the spotlight that came from that Bernie wave, those who still stand firm and say, no, 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 I'm not voting for Joe Biden, those people would always still continue to be a target. And I think that's important for people to understand. But I want to show you a mask off moment because here are these guys, like, again, here's this Gen Z kid and his friend revealing to you that who they just really are. Now, this gentleman here, he made this video, said this video would end their careers. And he talks about grifting. And I think I need to fast forward a little bit here. He talks about grifting and he brings up these particular guys, Harry and his friend. I want you to hear something that they say on Tim Dillon's show that I think is a mask off moment in reference to the Democratic Party and what they're really doing. Listen to this.
This is the definition of a grifter.
To be honest, like it's actually really hard in this space, right? Like we have like 45 seconds to record a video, keep people's attention. And a lot of the people on our side, like if they start hearing, like I've actually done it before. I've criticized like Democrats, like specifically Hakeem Jeffries, and it all just went south. Like I started losing followers. Like it's bad, right? And I really want to.
Did you just hear what he just said? He criticized people like Hakeem Jeffries and Democrats, but then he started losing followers. Does everybody get what this is about? This is all, but these kids don't care about any type of real transformational change. They just want to gain followers. That's all it's about. And it's easier for you to gain more followers if you're on this Biden train, if you're supporting the Democrat politicians. Mask off moment. It goes further. Let me run it back just a little bit. Just a teensy bit. There we go.
Definition of a grifter.
To be honest, like it's actually really hard in this space, right? Like we have like 45 seconds to record a video, keep people's attention. And a lot of the people on our side, like if they start hearing, like I've actually done it before. I've criticized like Democrats, like specifically Hakeem Jeffries, and it all just went south. Like I started losing followers. Like it's bad, right? And I really want to be that person that like reaches the other side, because Democrats, I mean, they're horrible at their jobs, right? They do a lot of shitty things, although I'll vote for them all the time.
Do you guys see the grift? Democrats, they're horrible at their jobs. They do a lot of crappy things, although I'll vote for them all the time. You'll never hear Harry or his friend admit what they said on Tim Dillon's show on Twitter. You'll never hear them say this in these TikTok videos that they have going viral. And Tim Dillon is going to point to them to be like, wait a minute, what did you just say?
Like Democrats, like specifically Hakeem Jeffries, and it all just went south. Like I started losing followers. Like it's bad, right? And I really want to be that person that like reaches the other side, because Democrats, I mean, they're horrible at their jobs, right? They do a lot of shitty things, although I'll vote for them all the time. But it's also hard in the space to criticize them.
That's a good, can we clip that quote? They're horrible
Please
at their
don't.
jobs.
Please don't. Please don't clip that. Please, no, please.
I mean, you literally can't make this stuff up. Look at his partner's face as he's saying what he's saying. That's the face of somebody who knows better, somebody who's struggling internally and just wants the individual next to them to please stop digging the hole deeper. Democrats are horrible at their job, but I'm too afraid to call them out because I'll lose followers, is essentially what he just said. Democrats suck at their job, and I tried criticizing them in the past, but it was just too painful because I'm literally part of a cult, and if you say anything targeting anyone with a D next to their name, well then the pitchforks and the torches come out. What an absolute coward. He essentially just admitted to millions of people who are probably going to watch this clip that he is in fact one of the biggest grifters online. A literal vote blue no matter who bought. He essentially said it. The Democrats suck at their jobs, but I'm gonna end up voting for them anyways. Because, oh, those Republicans, they're even worse. And towards the end of the video, Seth Dillon says, that's an amazing quote. Can we clip that? Can we please clip that? And the reaction is telling. Chris Mowry, that's the name, by the way, of the individual that's speaking, begs them not to clip his quote. You're literally on a podcast. I'm not sure if you realize. Please don't clip that. You know, again, another perfect sign that you're a dishonest grifter. If you're saying anything publicly that you believe, but you don't want it to get out there and you're telling people, please don't clip that and please don't release that statement, well then again, you're basically doing the Hillary Clinton thing of having a public opinion and also a private opinion. You say one thing publicly, but you believe another, or you're actually going to do something else behind the scenes.
They're actors. And there's more. So there are receipts. Those of us at RBN, we pulled this up. I think it was actually, who pulled this up? I don't know if it was Apollo who did this, or anyway, one of us at RBN pulled this up. It wasn't me. But it says you sold out for so little. Look, because you know people, there's this thing called receipts. And I'm going to keep it real. Actually, let me just scroll down because it makes it easier. So here's Harry and here's Chris, right? Again, they put the email there. Email harry@palettemanagement.com. Chris Mowry@palettemanagement.com. These people are paid. And then if you scroll down, look at the money. Recipient, Palette Media Inc. Here's the amount, $200,000. That's just one. Paid media advertising. October 19th, 2022. Then we move over here. Here's another one. Palette Media Inc. Transaction information amount. I think that's $30,000. You see how much they paying these kids? Look at this. Online advertising. You scroll down and it says here, committee information, DNC Services Corporation. DNC Services Corporation. Palette Media Inc. Committee information is DNC Services Corporation. So, like we've been saying, these guys are paid by the DNC. I mean, you know, you could at least try to make it look less obvious. Like, you don't come out of nowhere and all of a sudden you have hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter and nobody knew who you were. That's not how that works. And then it's like every tweet, Biden, 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 Biden. No one who's Gen Z is tweeting about Biden like every freaking hour. It's so obvious. Now, remember when they made this video, I'm going to let you guys laugh. We got to laugh tonight before y'all head out, okay? I want you guys to laugh. They made this video, right? And Big Mad Crab actually made fun of it. It was really funny. So we're going to show you both. I'm going to show you the video, and then I'm going to show you the parody from Big Mad Crab.
What the Republican Party doesn't understand about Gen Z is we don't like you. You claim you want to appeal to Gen Z, but you call us stupid, you say we're dumb, you say we're indoctrinated. I promise it's a losing strategy. And Gen Z is watching the Republican Party extremely closely as they destroy our environment, take rights away from women, do nothing about kids being shot in schools, and if they think they can give the middle finger to our generation and get away with it, they're sorely mistaken. What the Republican Party doesn't understand about Gen Z is we don't like you.
It's so forced. It's so fake. So Big Mad Crab made fun of it. And I thought it was so funny. I have to show this again. Gen Z won't sit back and watch as the Democratic Party tries to destroy the country. Had to use my white boy powers for good. So this is this is Big Mad Crab. So he makes fun of them. This is funny.
Democratic Party doesn't understand about Gen Z is that we don't like you. Claim you want to appeal to Gen Z, but you call us stupid.
What else do we know about this population, 18 through 24? They are stupid.
You call us privileged.
The younger generation now tells me how tough things are. Give me a break.
I promise you, it's a losing strategy. Gen Z is watching the Democratic Party extremely closely as they continue to approve drilling contracts, refuse to codify roll into law, and blow up major energy pipelines. And if they think they can give the middle finger to our generation and get away with it, they're sorely mistaken. The Democratic Party doesn't understand about Gen Z is that we don't like you.
You gotta love parodies, guys. I'm sorry. You have to laugh there. There's always a room for a laugh. But anyway, those guys are paid. No, we'll have to get back to I got Washington, Eric. Washington's really quick. Washington State. Oh, wait a minute. I don't know if it is quick. I'll start Washington. How about that? In reference to ballot measures, we are now on Washington State. I'll start it. I'm gonna have to finish it the Thursday night. Washington State. Citizens of Washington may initiate legislation as either a direct or indirect state statute. In Washington, citizens also have the power to repeal legislation via veto referendum. Citizens may not initiate constitutional amendments. The Washington State Legislature, however, may place legislatively referred constitutional amendments on the ballot with 2/3 majority vote of each chamber. Single subject rule. Washington has a single subject rule for ballot measures. The relevant law restricts bills in the legislature. However, this restriction has been found to apply to initiatives as well. Subject restrictions. Any initiated measure that would authorize gambling or a lottery requires 60% supermajority in Washington. So we talked about this before. Some states have tried to push this measure where instead of having a simple majority, now you need at least 60% in order for certain measures to pass. So apparently in Washington State, they don't really want you really pushing any ballot measures for gambling or lotteries. It's really interesting. Veto referendums on emergency legislation. In Washington, veto referendums cannot be used on emergency legislation. Competing initiatives. Competing measures are arranged on the ballot so voters can express two separate preferences. First, voters choose between either measure or neither measure. Second, voters choose between one measure and the other. If a majority prefer neither, both measures fail. If a majority prefer either, then the second vote determines which measure will be approved. When an indirect initiative measure has been rejected by the legislature, pushing it on the ballot, lawmakers may submit an alternative competing measure to voters. Here's the number required to qualify for the ballot. In Washington, the signature requirement for citizen initiatives is based on the total number of votes cast for office of governor at the last regular gubernatorial election. The last one, that's important, not current. Initiatives, whether they are indirect or direct, require 8% of the votes cast for office of governor in the last gubernatorial race. Remember, it's for state statutes only. They have no ability to do constitutional amendments using this process. Veto referendum petitions require signatures equal to 4% of the votes cast for the office of governor. So that's important to note. And of course, there are deadlines as with any other state. It says that initial filings for initiatives cannot be made more than 10 months before the general election, at which their proposal would be presented to voters if direct, and presented to legislator if indirect. Signatures for direct initiatives are due at least 4 months prior to the general election. Signatures for indirect initiatives are due at least 10 days prior to the beginning of the legislative session in the year of the targeted election. Signatures for veto referendums must be submitted 90 days following the adjournment of the legislative session at which the targeted bill was passed. Supermajority requirements. In Washington, any initiated measure that would authorize gambling or lottery requires 60% majority vote. So we mentioned that earlier. And then there's one more part I wanted to touch on, and then we'll have to finish this part right here, advisory votes. An advisory question is a type of ballot measure that asks votes a non-binding question. The largest difference between an advisory vote and any other type of ballot measure is that the outcome of the ballot question is not legally binding and will not directly result in a new, changed, or rejected law or constitutional amendment. Rather, the advisory question allows voters to express their general opinion on the issue. Washington has automatic advisory votes on any bill that increases tax revenue. All right, we will do call-in tonight, guys. So I hope you're ready and excited for that. I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back, and we'll jump on call-in.
All right, call-in time. Well, that idea of Cornel West being in the call-in is quite a concept. We'll see if that really happens. But this is the part of the show where we give Sabrina a little break before we go into the call-in part. Let's see. All right, I put the call-in link into the old chat in case people want to get a head start on that, or that's where the call-in will be. I'm also going to put it up here on our screen to show you what we'll be talking about. Well, what a great show we had tonight, and we want to hear what you think about it. Here it is. Call in episode 122. She's done 122 of these. It's Cornel West interview response and Hawaii disaster. And of course, as always, on the old call-in show, you can talk about anything you want, and we want to hear from you. All right, let me hit a couple of these super chats. Here we go. Thanks for the super chat, Aaron Costello, who says, I love you, Sabby. Thanks for that, Aaron. And Dogs FTW says, GP's only mission is to run Dem spoiler every 4 years. Even when given jungle primary in California, they run only 3 candidates in 52 districts. Voting third doesn't change duopoly one bit. History is evidence. Thanks for the $9.99 dogs. I'll say that much. And thanks for the super sticker, Team Orca. Appreciate that. And Perry Stein said, Crystal is an actress who plays an anti-establishment role on TV while actually supporting the Dems. I hear you on that, Perry. And it's from Ms. Asking me if he'll quit the WHO. All right. Yeah, so the interview with Dr. West, I thought was really good. Of course, you can probably, anybody who knows what I like to talk about a lot can probably guess what my favorite part was when the corruption word came up. And I really feel that really needs to be the center of things. And really needs to be what's led with, what needs to be what needs to be the focus and the thing that's the major problem, thing that needs to be fixed, because both parties are corrupt. It's a uniparty, it's corrupt. They serve the same top 0.1 percenters, the billionaire class, the mega corporations, the MIC, the bankers, the usual suspects. And until we get serious about dealing with how they do that, which is through corruption, through money, through the system of legalized bribery, we call Congress, we call our government, and really take back our government and democratize it. And like when people talk about this, like I felt like in that one of those interviews with Brianna Joy Gray, she got kind of close to it, where she was kind of saying, well, we keep having the same thing with the uniparty, and we keep having the same cycle, and what do we do about it? And and what we do about it is you have to deal with the money and deal with the corruption. And when you center on that, then, well, let me show that. So like if someone wants to know like what am I really talking about, what's concrete about this, then if you look at what I've been working on in my old 11demands.com site, where I kind of put some of these thoughts. Let's see if I can put it in on the fly. Yes, 11demands.org. There's, I've thrown up there a proposed platform for a real left candidate, where I'm kind of saying, if you want to know what I'm talking about, how I would say to make this concrete, then, you focus on the corruption. You put it first, you make it the first thing you talk about, and it would be a winning strategy. I mean, if you ask people, is Congress corrupt? If you did that poll, I mean, you would get 90% of people say, yes, Congress is corrupt. I mean, this can be a winning campaign. This can be a movement. And then if people are saying, okay, I agree with that, what are you going to do about it? Then, that's where you get into, you need to pass laws for clean elections and public financing of campaigns, in every state. And you make that a movement, you make that a push, you make that really what you motivate people with. And then at the federal level, we have this problem with the Supreme Court, right? I mean, anything you pass, the Supreme Court is gonna knock down, because what do they say? They say corporations are not people, and they say the Supreme Court says corporations are people and money is speech. So if you're going to get serious about fixing that, then you need a constitutional amendment that fixes that. This can be the rallying cry of a movement, of a campaign, of any of this. You can be, pushing any politician would be candidate. I mean, are you really going to push for that or not? And then, if you're getting serious about this, you're talking about the lobbying, you're talking about the corruption that needs to be prosecuted, revolving door politics, term limits, transparency, all these things get into it. But I guess I just feel like when these conversations are happening and the corruption and the fixes for it aren't front and center, then yes, we need to be doing all the other things, which, I put in here, healthcare, minimum wage, the wars, civil liberties, climate, economy, immigration, and taxation. But how are you going to do any of these things if you don't fix the corruption? It's like you have to fix the corruption and the bribery and clean it up and clean them out, or else nothing's going to get done. It doesn't matter, how much you call for healthcare for all, for all these good policies. If you don't fix the corruption, if you don't fix the people that are in there and who they serve. And so right now we have a government that serves their constituents, but their constituents aren't us. Their constituents are the billionaires. And so the key challenge is to swap in that government for a real government that works for us and not just for the billionaires. All right, I've done my spiel.
That's right.
Right,
That's all a good point.
All right, Bad Cookies is saying, do you think it's even possible to clean the corruption? It's gonna take a mass movement. It's gonna take people in the streets. It's gonna take, that kind of level of protest, both to get someone like Cornel elected and to get these real measures passed to clean up the corruption. That's why I'm always saying we need a movement.
That's right. And we can talk about this more tonight on Call In, guys. So that link is pinned to the top of the chat. So I'm excited to discuss that.
Now people are going to say, when's Cornel coming on Call In? You said he's coming.
Yeah. I'll set that up. Give it time, because just keep in mind, like, I'm not the only one.
That would be wild.
Yeah, there's a lot of people reaching out to Dr. West. So yeah, I'd be super excited for that. Tomorrow night, guys, forgot to mention, tomorrow night I am going to be on Katie Halper's show. She's doing a panel for the GOP debates. I think it looks like we're going to be playing a drinking game. That looks like fun. So it should be pretty fun. So definitely check that out. That's tomorrow night. Basically, Katie's going to be live streaming the GOP primary debates. Should be a fun time. So catch me over there. I'm not sure what time I'm popping in, but I'll find out at some point. And I guess I'll see you guys over there. But other than that, let's head on over to Call In. So the link is pinned to the top of the chat. I thought I had do I have it somewhere? Nope. I don't know what I did. Oh, sorry. I was going to pull it up for you guys real quick so you can see it. So, okay, here we go. Okay, so I'll just share. It's so humid. My face is so shiny because it's so humid. Shiny face girl. All right, so join me on Call In tonight, episode 122, Cornel interview response and Hawaii disaster. And we discuss whatever else you guys want to talk about tonight as well. Should be fun. So link is pinned to the top of the chat. I'll see you guys over there. You know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.